Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto finds Kushina in Wave. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Naruto sighed, standing in front of the thriving village of Uzushiogakure, the moonlight streaming down on his unmoving form. It had been 3 weeks since he got here, 3 weeks since he had been blasted over 20 years into the past, and he had just one thing to say about it: fuck Kami. Still, it wasn't without its bright sides. After all, he did have the chance to save his parents' lives now. So long as he didn't screw the timeline up, too much at least. Naruto closed his eyes, red coat billowing in the wind. His chakra flared as he pushed it towards his eyes. The fox, or vixen as she preferred to be called, was strangely silent. It seemed even she was taking this seriously. It was a good thing he still had her, otherwise he could well have been clueless at the time of Whirlpool's destruction. And then where would he be? Naruto had decided the moment he found himself in the past to save his parents' lives, but to do that he needed to be close to them. Considering the year at the moment, they were both around 12 right now compared against his 16, that was going to be easier said than done. So he needed a plan. His original thought had been to try and enlist as a shinobi of Konoha. That fell through when he realized one thing. His mother, Kushina, was a Jinchuriki. They would likely monitor her far too closely for Naruto to get anywhere near her. Minato was out thanks to Jiraiya taking him on as an apprentice. The Toad Sennin was far too observant to let him get close. Then it hit him like a bolt of lightning, a way of not to keep them both safe, then to keep Kushina safe. Naruto figured that his dad didn't need it. After all, Jiraiya may have been a super pervert, but he was also crazy strong. Not to mention, with Naruto's knowledge of future events, he would be indispensable to his mother, along with being the best person to help train her in the use of Akane's chakra. So his plan was to become her Jonin sensei, just one small itty-bitty problem. No way in hell was Konoha going to let him, no matter how strong he was, be her sensei. At this point in time they did not know him. He was an unknown factor, a wild card. No one was dumb enough to let someone like that near a Jinchuriki. So he needed credentials as well as a way to solidify himself as a friend. Akane had come up with the answer. Save Uzu from destruction. The act would make the Uzumaki clan indebted to him and solidify the fact he was in fact a friend to both Uzu and the Hidden Leaf. Fortunately, the amount of ninja sent to attack Uzu was small in number, unsurprising really, as the village only numbered around 500 shinobi all told. If the figures that Akane remembered were right, then Uzu only sent around 1,500 troops. He could fight that many. Naruto's eyes snapped open as he concentrated on the shoreline, his eyes glowing a vibrant purple as he activated his Rinnegan, the legendary Dujutsu, glowing ominously in the night. They would be coming any minute now. Naruto clenched and unclenched his hands. He saw them, hundreds of small figures sprinting across the water. Naruto smiled and held 2 fingers up in front of his face. His smile turned sadistic as he copied one of the most disgusting, if ingenious, men he had ever had the misfortune to meet. You know, boys, art is a blast, Katsu. The exploding tags under the water went off. The explosions tore off the invaders' body parts and mangled their limbs. Red began to pollute the pure blue sea. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the devastation his attack caused. The village of Uzu would not fall this day. Its destruction would not cause his Ka-san pain like it did in his own timeline. Even though Kushina wasn't his mother and she didn't know who he was, Naruto still felt like he should defend Uzu. Though he would be lying if he didn't admit that he had more than a passing personal motive here. After all, he never really had a home in Konoha. His ancestral home of Uzu had been destroyed before he had been born. Part of him was defending Uzu simply so that him that would be born later would have a home, even if he failed to save his parents. Naruto extended his arms. He could hear the sounds of the Uzu shinobi closing in from behind him. He needed to end this, and fast. Shinra Tensai. Naruto commanded, sending a wall of compressed gravity at the ninjas in front of him. The attackers' bodies were thrown backwards like rag dolls, his attack smashing them through the trees on the shoreline, breaking bones and killing most of the attacking ninja instantly. Most, if not all, of the survivors of his attack had ended in the water unconscious. It would lead to them drowning. Naruto could hear the Uzu shinobi getting closer. By the looks of things, he had very few enemies left alive on the battlefield. He raised his arms again, pushing even more chakra into his arms, bending and compressing the gravity in front of his hands. Shinra Tensai. The blonde declared, launching the wave of gravity again. It shredded through the remaining Iwa forces and Naruto smiled as he felt the Uzu shinobi behind him. Turning around, the blonde smiled at the man behind him. "Sorry to ask," he said lightly, "but would you mind catching me?" he said before falling over in a dead faint. The Uzu shinobi that caught him chuckled. He was not quite sure if the man was a friend or a foe, but given what he had just done to their attackers, he would make sure that the Uzukage would hear him out. Naruto groaned as he woke up. His headache was killing him. The blonde looked up, his blue eyes saw a white ceiling. He breathed in the smell of antiseptic. Naruto sighed. He could already see where this was going, but he looked at the bed, standard hospital issue. Naruto sighed. Even after being displaced in time, it seemed he still hated being in hospital. As such, he did the one thing that made any sense at the time. "Fuck me," he groaned, allowing his head to fall back onto the pillow. Naruto heard the distinctive sound of wood scraping on tile and looked to the door. Anbu, or whatever the Whirlpool Village's version of them was, walked through the door, with handcuffs. Naruto groaned again as he saw them. "Fuck me," sideways. Naruto amazingly enough actually did allow himself to be handcuffed, before being hauled in front of the man who called himself the Uzukage. Though Naruto did suspect that being called that was more a nickname or form of respect than anything else. After all, only the 5 great countries' leading shinobi had right to the title of Kage. The man was tall, slightly over 2 meters, and was dressed in battle armor, reminiscent of the Shodem and Nidaime Hokages. He also had violet, blue eyes, something Naruto had always found rather exotic even on his mother. The man sat down before him, a stern look on his face, as if evaluating Naruto's worth. "So why don't you tell me why you decided to help my village and we can work from there?" The man proposed, not bothering to give his name. Naruto sighed. Oh boy, this was going to be a headache. The next few hours were spent with Naruto explaining to the man who called himself Uzukage what he had done in the battle. He also managed to convince him to undo the chakra restrictions on him in order to show the man his Rinnegan. Fortunately, it also allowed him to slip a hypnotic suggestion into the man's head using the Genjutsu of Uchiha Shisui Kotoa Matsukami, lit. Distinguished Heavenly Gods, the suggestion being that he be rewarded with a few requests for his services to Uzu. Requests that the Uzukage would do his best to honor. It was one of the times that Naruto was glad to be an Uzumaki. Kotoa Matsukami would normally only be usable once every 10 years. However, with a body like his with DNA similar to the Senju clan, Naruto could cut down that time to once a month. The Uzukage smiled at the young man in front of him. "Well then, let me thank you behalf of Uzu for saving our village. I will be putting in a request for additional support to Konoha." Naruto smiled at that. It was just the opening he needed. "Now then, I can't just let such a good deed go unrewarded. I can grant you almost anything, bar being Uzukage." The man laughed. Naruto just smiled a little more. Asking for something like that would just be egotistical, though he was sure it had happened. Naruto bowed his head to the Uzukage. "Uzukage-sama, I have only one request I would like granted." Naruto asked, trying to sound as humble as possible. "I would like to be the Jonin sensei of Uzumaki Kushina when she starts her ninja career." The Uzukage's eyes narrowed, before he cocked his head to the side and smiled. Naruto almost smirked. It seemed Kotoa Matsukami was doing its job. "Well, you would need to be a ninja of either Konoha or Uzu for that, but it is easily solved. Narukami Naruto, I hereby instate you as a Jonin-level ninja of Uzushiogakure no Sato." The Uzukage smiled, before unleashing a wave of killer intent. "Though if anything, and I mean anything, happens to my daughter Kushina, I will have your head, do you understand me?" Naruto nodded vigorously. The man in front of him was his grandfather. It was taking everything he had not to cry in happiness and hug the man, his family, and the man would never even know. Naruto smiled at the Uzukage. "So then, when do I leave for Konoha?" Naruto asked. The Uzukage smiled. "Really that eager to get started?" The man laughed. "As far as I know, the team placements are in 1 week. I will send a carrier pagon in advance informing them of your impending arrival. More importantly, of my desire for you to be Kushina's sensei. However, there is a good chance that the bird could be killed before it reaches Konoha, so I'll give you a copy of the letter as well. Shouldn't take more than an hour." Naruto smiled at his grandfather. "Okay, then I'll just hang around here till then. Oh, by the way, I never got your name." The Uzukage laughed, shaking his head from side to side. "Oh, how rude of me. Call me Dat, Uzumaki Dat, Naruto-san." Naruto nodded in acceptance as the Azukage walked from the room. Naruto stretched out his awareness and found he was alone. He smiled, bringing his hands up in a ram seal. Kai. Naruto activated the last part of the Koto Amatsukami he had implanted in his grandfather. The Genjutsu's final trap activated, destroying all memories of his Rinnegan. Naruto smiled. Sometimes it really was nice when everything went to plan. Naruto sighed. It was only 3 days to Konoha by foot. He had managed to stretch that to a week. No way in hell was he going to be able to put his Gigi under a Koto Amatsukami-induced illusion. Oh well, not everything in life was easy. A smile found its way to his face as the great gates of Konoha came into view. Naruto began to take stock of the village. The Third Ninja World War hadn't started, yet at least. In his own timeline or dimension, he really hadn't quite figured that part out yet. The destruction of Uzu had been the trigger for the beginning of the war. The longest of the 4 wars, spanning 12 years in total, including armistice and some backdoor Cold War politics. Hell, all up there was a grand total of around 2 years in armistice treaties and demobilization, probably why the war lasted as long as it did. Naruto shook his reminiscing of history off. He stopped to consider, is it really history? Well, from his perspective it was. But it hadn't actually happened yet, so, oh hell, he'd think about it later. He yawned as he walked into the hidden village and was immediately accosted by the Anbu. Naruto-san, we have been expecting you, please follow us to the Hokage. Naruto nodded as an Anbu operative placed a hand on his shoulder. He knew who he would see in the Hokage chair, Sarutobi Hiruzen, his Gigi. Naruto just hoped he had it in him not to break down and cry. The Anbu made the hand seal for the Shunshin and Naruto felt the world blur around him, before he was standing in the middle of a very familiar office. The man behind the desk was dressed in the traditional robes of the Hokage, brown hair and dark eyes, though Naruto did note he was still smoking his ever-present pipe. It took everything he had not to break down and cry before hugging the old man. He never got to say goodbye before Orochimaru killed him after all. Sarutobi Hiruzen studied his newest ninja carefully. Dad had spoken highly of the man despite his young age. Now he could see why. The man was perfectly balanced, every angle ready to be attacked or defended from. You couldn't copy that. Holding your body like that only came from a lifetime of life and death battles. The young man looked no older than his mid to late teens. What kind of life had he lived for him to be able to hold a battle-ready stance subconsciously at all times? Before anything else, I would like to ask, did you have a good trip to Konoha, Naruto-san? He inquired politely. He didn't trust the teen completely despite Dad's message, but there was nothing wrong with being polite. I did, Hokage-sama. I must say that Hai no Kuni is a lovely country this time of year. Naruto replied just as politely. Hiruzen smiled in acceptance of Naruto's statement before frowning at the young, but obviously well-trained shinobi. Now then, why do you want to train Uzumaki Kushina? Naruto sighed. This is going to be a long day, he lamented internally. Kushina was almost bouncing off the walls as she walked down the hall of the academy. She was a rather pretty girl with long red hair and a rounded face. Violet blue eyes shining with life added to her allure. It was today she couldn't believe it. Today she would become a genin, and likely beat up the dumbasses that called her tomato one last time. She wondered who her Jonin sensei would be. Would she be paired with Makoto-chan? Kushina hoped so. She and the young Uchiha worked well together. Kushina wasn't really one for ninjutsu, preferring Tai and Kenjutsu to that particular branch of the ninja arts. But her chakra chains more than made up for her lack of ninjutsu and would allow her to hold an enemy down as Makoto fried them with a Kaiden jutsu. Kushina made a mental note to learn some basic wind ninjutsu to complement her friend. Giddy with excitement, the redhead threw the door open. A million-watt smile plastered over her face. Seeing her excitement mirrored on her friend's face only heightened her desire for her career as a genin to begin. Then she felt it, a chill that sent her almost into convolutions with its malicious and murderous intent. Senju Nawaki and Uchiha Makoto also felt this ungodly chill that seemed to come from the devil himself and shivered in fear. Oddly enough, this happened at the same time as Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, or as he went by now, Narukami Naruto, was planning out his torture training methods for his new genin team. Naruto was positively giddy. Oh hell yes, he could save 2 of his precious people and help out a 3rd. It had been an uphill battle in convincing the 3rd Hokage that his intentions were pure, But he eventually won the old goat around. Naruto made a quick mental note to keep an eye on Danzo. The moment the crippled bastard tried anything he would die, slowly. Naruto looked at the door to room 203, Naruto smiled fondly. His memories of Iruka flooding his vision, before he brought his leg back and quite literally kicked the door off its hinges. Leaving it to land with a loud crash. Naruto walked into the room with a large smile on his face while everyone inside the room looked at him with wide disbelieving eyes. Okay, Uchiha Makoto, Senju Nawaki and finally Uzumaki Kushina. I am your new Jonin sensei, meet me on the roof in 5 or so, help me, I will send your asses back to the academy so fast it will make your head spin. They didn't need to be told twice, running straight out the door and not looking back. Naruto smiled, gave the teacher a quick wink and a smile before walking after his new students at a leisurely pace. The teacher picked his jaw up off the floor. Team assignments weren't till after lunch, it wasn't even 8 am yet. Hell, he hadn't even gotten to give his congratulatory speech. The 3 genin were ecstatic to be out of that classroom. They were told that their sensei wouldn't pick them up till after lunch. Looked like they got lucky he was early. But could this guy really be a good sensei? He barely looked older than them. Naruto smiled at the 3 in front of him. He hoped he could torture, he meant train, them well enough. As when the 3 genin of the newly created Team 5 shivered, like a malicious god was about to bring down swift and horrible retribution on them. Okay, then tell me your likes, dislikes, hopes, dreams and any fun facts or hobbies you have. Naruto said cheerfully. He would not pull a Kakashi when it came to be his turn to give an introduction, no matter how tempting it may be. You're up first, Tomato-chan. Naruto said, pointing quickly at his miniature mother. A tick mark appeared on Kushina's head. Who the hell are you calling a tomato, you bastard? The fiery redhead yelled, charging him, rage and embarrassment clear on her face. Naruto sighed. Oh yeah, he was going to have to rein her temper in, though he would admit he found it cute. The newly appointed whirlpool, Konoha Jonin, disappeared in a burst of speed, reappearing behind of the newly appointed Uzumaki genin and promptly placed a kunai to her jugular. The genin on the roof froze. Naruto dug the kunai into Kushina's pale white skin a little. Not enough to draw blood but enough to make his point. Considering the way her face was paling even from behind, he could tell he was doing his job. I am going to say this once and only once, Naruto said in a low tone, causing a shiver to go up his genin's spines. You are genin and I am a jonin. The next time you try something as fucking stupid as attacking me head on, I will hurt you. You are a ninja, not a samurai. Do not bring a misplaced sense of honor into your fights if you were going to attack me. Then wait until my guard is down and poison me or backstab me, because otherwise you will not even be able to touch me. Remember that, genin. Naruto hissed into Kushina's ear, causing the girl to shiver in fright. Naruto breathed out deeply. Kushina, he said in a far kinder tone. If you were on the battlefield and let your temper get the best of you like that, you would die. Do you understand me? Naruto took the kunai away from her throat and the redhead nodded. I called you Tomato-chan just now to see how you would react and if your temper is going to be a danger to your teammates, and it is. I will not do it again, but please get your temper under control or else you will lead to someone getting killed. The redhead looked dejected before looking away ashamed. Naruto gestured for her to sit down. Okay, then let's try this again. I'll go first this time. My name is Narukami Naruto. My likes include making new jutsu and my friends. His heart clenched at the mention of his friends. He would never see them again. My dislikes include any moron who can't tell the difference between a scroll and the kunai sealed into it. His genin all looked a little lost at that. And people who mistreat and look down on the Jinchuriki simply for being different. Kushina looked shocked when he said that. My hope is to one day see my friends again and maybe meet that special someone. I currently have no dreams for myself. Naruto smiled at his genin and pointed to Kushina. You're up, Kushina-chan, he said smiling, as Kushina's face lit up like a Christmas tree. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. My likes are Makoto-chan, Uzushiogakure, Fuinjutsu and the food of the gods ramen. My dislikes are my nickname and people who make fun of me for being from outside of Hai no Kuni. My hobby is cooking and my dream. Kushina took a deep breath in. Naruto's instincts honed by years of being around Sakura kicked in. In less time than it took for the 3 genin to blink, Naruto had earplugs in Makoto, Nawaki and his own ears, just as Kushina screamed. To be the first female Hokage, Databane. Naruto removed his earplugs and the other two did the same, looking at him gratefully. So that's your dream, huh? Naruto said softly. Kushina nodded in a determined manner and he smiled. Well then I guess as your sensei it's my job to help you get there then, you'll be training hard. Make sure you're ready for it. Kushina just nodded almost dumbly, most people just made fun of her dream when she told them. He said he would help her get there, her face sported a small blush. You're up next Nawaki-kun, Naruto said pointing at the Senju heir. Nawaki smiled, finally someone who didn't call him Senju-sama. He was a person, damn it, not just a name. My name is Senju Nawaki. My likes are my older sister Tsunade, ninjutsu and learning more about the Senju history. Oh, and pranks, can't forget pranks. My dislikes are the elder council, traitors and people who judge others before getting to know them. My hobby? Well, I guess that would be pranking people. My dream is to become Hokage and protect everyone in Konoha. He finished smiling brightly. Naruto chuckled. Looks like I'll have to train you and Kushina hard if I've got 2 Hokage candidates on the team. I'm only going to say it once though, my training methods are a little insane, be ready. Nawaki nodded, looking a little frightened that even his sensei admitted freely that his methods were insane. Finally you're up, Makoto-chan. Naruto finished smiling brightly. The raven-haired girl nodded. My name is Uchiha Makoto. My likes include Kushina-chan, Konoha, Kaden Jutsu and sweet things. My dislikes are arrogance. Naruto barely managed to stifle his laughter that an Uchiha of all people disliked arrogance. Moreover, this was Sasuke's mother, that was irony at its finest. Perverts, rapists and the Uchiha Elder Council. My hobby? Well, I never really thought about it. Makoto finished sheepishly. Kushina, Nawaki and Naruto just chuckled. My dream is to have a happy family with some children and die along before they do. She finished with a smile. Naruto had to hold in a grimace. She had gotten her wish in his timeline, just in the most disturbing way possible. He dusted off his hands while standing up and looking at the 3 genin. Okay then, time for your real genin test, and before you ask, yes, there is another test you need to take. The test you guys took in the academy was just to see if you had the capacity to become genin, and you obviously all do. This test is to see if you deserve to be genin. He took out a pair of bells and tied them to his new Uzushiogakure Jonin vest. Your test is to get these bells from me before sundown today. Any and all forms of attack are allowed and the only restrictions are that you have to stay inside Konoha or the training grounds exempting ground 44, go. Naruto disappeared in a poof of smoke, revealing him to be a shadow clone. It took about 5 minutes for the genin to work out what he meant and immediately ran in opposite directions to find him. Nawaki shivered, he could feel it, a predator was watching him, just waiting for him to show some kind of weakness before striking. It had been 3 weeks since Kushina, Makoto and he had passed the true genin exam and been thrown into this hell that their Jonin sensei called training. Now that wasn't to say he didn't think Naruto wasn't a good guy, he actually had a lot of respect for the older blonde. But his training methods were insane. What kind of monster would do this to children? He felt his back press up against his 2 teammates. Is he gone? Makoto asked in a fearful tone. They had been dodging surprise attacks and exploding clones all day. Their nerves were at breaking point. No, he's not. Kushina stated, sounding more than a little frightened. He watching us, waiting for our guard to slip. The 3 genin were standing back to back watching the forest as if it was a monster waiting to devour them. Waiting for your guard to slip? Came the honestly confused voice. Who said it hadn't already? The cheerful voice asked, right from the center of their formation. Nawaki turned around first, kunai leading. Naruto's boot met the Senju heir's sternum and sent him flying, cracking a rib. Makoto jumped back to get more room and quickly found a fist buried in her gut, doubling her over and causing her to vomit. Naruto spun, raising his leg to deliver a brutal axe kick to Kushina's head. They would thank him for this later. He knew the third ninja war would start soon. As much as he hated himself for doing this to them, they would need this training to survive a hell like that. Naruto gave all his genin a quick once-over. They were good, very, very good. He had made the right choice doing nothing but training for 3 weeks. His genin slowly managed to haul themselves off the floor, all of them coughing up blood. Naruto smiled at them, before taking a scroll out of his vest. Okay then, Team 5, great job today. I am happy to tell you that tomorrow you have your first C-rank mission. Naruto said, smiling at them. The genin's jaws dropped. A C-ranked mission? They hadn't even done 1D rank yet. They took it all back. Their sensei was awesome. Naruto smiled and gestured them all to come in closer. Okay, then the job's simple. Just a guard and escort mission to Kawa no Kuni. Shouldn't take more than a week. Pack well and make sure you take at least enough equipment for a B rank or a rank if you can afford it. No harm in being careful. With his mission history, they were probably going to end up doing an A rank. He hated his luck sometimes. Naruto vanished in a puff of smoke to reappear over by the entrance to the training ground. So then why are you all still standing there? Naruto asked, pointing at the three. Then they heard it, the telltale sound of an exploding tag. Nawaki spun around. Cow! He screamed, jumping away from the model cow covered in explosives, an action that was quickly mirrored by Makoto and Kushina. The cow exploded, sending them all skidding across the grass of the training ground, with minor burn marks marring their forms. Naruto smiled at his downed team. See you at the front gate at 9 tomorrow, he said cheerfully, before walking off whistling a jaunty tune. The three genin took it all back. Their sensei was an ass. Naruto sighed, hanging his head. It was 9:10. Where the hell were they? Hell, even the client was late. The undercover Uzumaki sighed again before looking up at the clouds and felt his body relax. So this is why Shikamaru found this so enjoyable. His heart ached. His friends, they were dead. He wouldn't see them ever again. Even if they were born in this world, they wouldn't be the same people, so he would never see them again. His hand wandered to his right eye, and Naruto smirked. Itachi's gift to him as the inheritor of his will was inside this right eye. The determination of the man who killed almost every Uchiha for the sake of Konoha was inside his eye. As was the will of a man who thought himself a god and wanted nothing more than world peace. Flashback. Bansho Tenin. The resurrected corpse of Nagato spoke out, drawing Naruto irresistibly towards the now controlled Edo Tensei zombie. Nagato reached back his and plunged his fingers into Naruto's right eye, before tearing it out. Blood splattered over the ground and marred Nagato's face as Naruto screamed in pain. His world was filled with pain. His eye was gone. His eye, oh god. Naruto choked down a scream of pain. He wasn't out of the fight yet. He still had Kyuubi's chakra cloak. He lifted his leg and slammed it into Nagato's sternum. His chakra cloak was immediately ripped off, leaving his leg bare. Damn it, he'd forgotten about that stupid ability. B came down from above, aiming to slash off Nagato's arm. The Rouge Uzumaki didn't even bat an eyelash. Shinra Tensei, he commanded, sending Naruto and B flying away from him and through several trees. The controlled Nagato placed his hand on the ground. Kuchiyose no Jutsu. Yama no O. A monstrous construct rose from the ground, the kanji for king inscribed upon its head. Naruto felt his breathing quicken as he observed it with his remaining eye. He had summoned it again, the thing that gave back the people of Konoha their lives, the king of hell. Itachi chose that moment to get B and him to safety, pulling them into the embrace of Susanoo. Nagato didn't even look surprised. The Rinnegan wielder simply raised his hand to the sky. Chibaku Tensei. The sphere of black gravity soared into the sky and tore the earth asunder, pulling it into the sky. Itachi gritted his teeth. Have you two seen this before? He asked calmly. Naruto nodded to the older Uchiha. I have. Let's just say if that thing manages to hit us, we're done for. It took me using 8 of Kyuubi's tails to be pulled out. He admitted. The reanimated Uchiha nodded at the younger man's statement. We'll have to bring it down using overwhelming force. If we all use our most powerful ranged jutsu, we may have a chance. But that is only if we aim for that black ball at its core. If we can't hit that, we are going to die. Naruto and B nodded. A familiar ringing sound began over Naruto's right hand while B transformed into his full 8-tail state. The three breathed in deeply. Naruto pulled his arm back. Futon. Rasen Shuriken. Yasaka no Magatama. Bijudama. The three called out the name of their respective attacks as they soared towards the growing moon. Hitting it head-on and causing an explosion of almost cataclysmic proportions. The result was the surrounding area being leveled to the point maps would have to be redrawn to show the aftermath of the battle. Nagato prepared to renew his attack. The Edo Tensei construct looked down, a glowing katana impaling him through the stomach. Nagato smiled at being released from his servitude before looking at Itachi. Thanks, I guess I owe you one. The Uchiha smiled at the former god's words of thanks. Anything you want to say, Nagato? Before you were sealed by the sword of Totsuka possessed by my Susanoo. The Rouge Uzumaki sighed and smiled, looking at the sky before looking at Naruto. Yes, actually, Naruto, could you come over here for a second? He asked. Naruto looked at Itachi uncertainly. The Uchiha nodded and Naruto walked over to his family, stopping in front of him. Nagato smiled at him before reaching out and grabbing the crow off of Naruto's shoulder and ripping out Shisui's eye. Before grabbing the Uzumaki heir's head and smiling as he placed the eye near Naruto's now vacant eye socket. I can't give you back your old eye, but I can give you this one, if you would like it, Naruto. The former terrorist asked. Naruto looked taken back. He could see out of his right eye again. He had already given up on ever doing that again. What do you think, Itachi? Nagato asked, smiling at the freed Uchiha. Itachi gave a small smirk in return. Accept it, Naruto. Inherit my, Shisui's and Nagato's wills. Your parents Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina, you are their living legacy. Accept Shisui's Sharingan and become ours as well. You will be the light we three leave behind in the darkness. The Uchiha said in a kind tone. Nagato smiled and Naruto felt his mouth dry up. Become their living legacy? What the hell were they thinking? Come on guys, there has to be a better person for the job. I'm sure I'll screw something up. Nagato and Itachi looked at him like he was crazy. Naruto. Itachi started. I murdered my entire clan for the sake of Konoha, sparing only my little brother, who is now walking down a path of darkness and could well destroy the leaf. Itachi finished lamely, sounding a little ticked off at admitting his failure. As for me, in case you don't remember, I created an organization that ended up being ruled by a madman that has a fairly good chance at actually achieving world domination. I don't think you can screw up worse than we already have. Nagato finished lamely. Naruto just stared at them both in amazement. They were actually admitting that? But I mean, B had enough at this point and smacked Naruto upside the head. Listen and listen, clear fool, cause Killer B is here, so let's make this clear right here. They want Ya to be a legacy, I say you let them have Ya. They want Ya, they need Ya, so why don't Ya stop clowin' and start posin' playa? The Hachibi Jinchuriki rapped at his younger counterpart. The three others just looked at him strangely. Naruto found a Susanoo hand holding him in place, as Nagato reached out to his eye socket. Here, this should heal you up and give you your chakra back. The Uzumaki smiled as he placed the eye inside Naruto's eye socket, who was held far too tightly to dislodge himself from the construct's grip. The man who once called himself God ran through some hand seals. Gedo. Rinne Tensai no Jutsu. Naruto felt the eye fuse into his head. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt. He smiled at the man in front of him as he began to disappear. Naruto. If Jiraiya was the first book in the trilogy, then it was a great one. However, myself as the second, it was horrible. You Naruto, you're the third and final book of our story, make it so good that everyone forgets the trash that the second book was. You Naruto are the bridge to peace and my living legacy, I counting on you, kid. Nagato finished just as the sealing was completed and he vanished for the final time. Naruto turned to Itachi, Sharingan in his right eye, its tome spinning slowly. Well, what are we waiting for, let's go. Flashback end. Naruto smiled at the memory. Surprisingly, it wasn't a painful one. Nagato had entrusted his dream to his younger counterpart and passed on with a smile. Naruto could be satisfied with that, not happy but satisfied at least. He looked up to see his three genin standing in front of him, along with the client. What took you guys so long? Naruto asked, looking at them. His genin sweat dropped as one. Sensei, Kushina ventured, smiling a little at the memory. We've been here for almost 20 minutes already. We tried calling you a few times but you just didn't react. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Sorry about that, I was thinking about some old memories. He said, giving them a smile. Makoto's interest was piqued by that statement. What kind of memories? She asked innocently. None of the assembled genin or the man they had been hired to escort missed the flash of sadness that flicked over Naruto's face. But it was gone so quickly they almost thought they imagined it. Naruto shrugged. Does it really matter at the moment, Makoto-san? At any rate, you must be Hibi-san, he said, addressing the older man with graying hair behind his genin team. The man nodded in answer to Naruto's question. Okay then, just a few things we need to thrash out then before we leave. he said cheerfully, pulling out the mission scroll. You wanted protection from bandits and highwaymen. As such you requested a C-ranked mission from Konoha. We are to take you to Senmei village in Kawa no Kuni. Is all this correct? Naruto asked. The man nodded. Indeed it is, but I have to ask, why did you feel the need to ask? Naruto shrugged, before smiling at his genin. Well, it was more for my genin than me, just so they understood the parameters of the mission and what you had asked for. I admit I could have just briefed them as we walked, but I like to ask the client these kind of questions. Once or twice I have had people deliberately mislabel missions because they couldn't pay the fee. It almost got me and my team killed more than once. So now I do this and try to see if you're lying or not. Personally I wouldn't care if you were, if it was just me. But I've got to look out for genin too now, so I have to be a little more careful. Naruto finished. The man looked at him for a second before nodding and walking out the gate. Naruto looked back at his genin. So what are you waiting for exactly? Let's get going, shall we? They didn't need to be told twice, and ran after the client. Naruto chuckled and jogged after them. All three of them seemed so eager. Naruto wondered if Sasuke, Sakura and he were the same way when they first started. Danzo looked at the root agent at his feet. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki has left the village? He asked, making sure he knew the full situation before he acted. The root agent nodded. Hi Danzo-sama. The Jinchuriki was spotted leaving the village at 9:30 this morning. In the company of Uchiha Makoto and Senju Nawaki, the Jinchuriki's teammates, as well as their Jonin instructor and Uzushiogakure shinobi called Narukami Naruto. Danzo looked intrigued at that piece of news. Sarutobi is letting an outsider train our weapon? He asked the man bowing before him. The man nodded. Hi Danzo-sama, to make matters worse we cannot find anything about this man. He was instated as an Uzumaki Jonin only a week before he arrived to be the Jinchuriki's sensei. Before that there are no records of this individual, nor any records of why he would be trusted with such a high-priority mission. The agent finished. Danzo sat back on his chair deep in thought. Send a sealmaster, or at least as close as we have after the Jinchuriki's team. Tell them to keep their distance and ambush them on the way back to Konoha. The Senju heir shows no signs of being able to use the Mokuton. He is expendable. The third daughter of the Uchiha clan head and the Jinchuriki are to be captured and subdued, ready for emotional conditioning. Their Jonin sensei is to be killed. A random element like that is far too dangerous to be left alone. He commanded. The agent bowed. Of course Danzo-sama, we will be the roots that hold up the great tree. The agent said, bowing to his master. Naruto sighed. Something was going to go horribly wrong, he could just feel it. The mission had been a complete success. Client safely delivered. Money paid. Free 3-day vacation that his students were all too happy to take, paid for by him. Naruto figured that with the hellish training that he had put them through they deserved some time off and no one was going to know. Naruto would just say the man stopped off at a couple of towns on the way, no harm done. It was exactly that had him worried. He couldn't go on one mission without something going horribly wrong. Be it bandits, jutsu thieves, people raising the dead and one-time jutsu thieving vampire bandits. That kind of shit does not happen to normal people. Yet this was going off without a hitch and that worried him. Kushina looked back at her sensei who was bringing up the rear of the group. She wasn't sure why, but she had this small ache in her chest. It started when she saw him flirting with that female cook in the restaurant they ate at. She didn't know why this feeling was there. What the hell was wrong with her? Naruto sighed. He could feel the trap up ahead, if whoever set this up was good. If he had been just about anyone else it probably would have worked. But he wasn't anyone else. Naruto was a veteran of the 4th Shinobi War, the shortest and bloodiest of all 4 wars, spanning 2 years in total. With a grand total of almost 33,000 casualties out of the original 50,000 shinobi in the Allied forces. He'd been dodging traps better than this one in his sleep for years. Naruto pumped chakra to his legs and disappeared in a burst of speed to appear in front of his genin, holding his arm out to stop them. Formation 3 defensive positions, attacked the enemy with deadly force. He yelled at them. The 3 confused genin quickly assembled themselves back to back. Naruto turned his attention to the forest ahead. You have 2 choices, come out or I smoke you out. Naruto yelled. No answer was forthcoming. The blonde shrugged, his hands blurred. Finishing on a tiger seal, Makoto's eyebrow raised. Her sensei could use Kaden jutsu? Kaden. Goryuka no Jutsu. The dragon-headed flame projectile roared towards the tree line, causing the ground under it to warp and melt with its heat. Before connecting with the trees and exploding, turning the forest into a raging inferno. Naruto didn't bother to observe his handiwork, he was more focused on the 7 Anbu that dropped out of the trees. Now what are 7 root members doing here? Tell me, has the old Warhawk really decided to have me eliminated? The 7 didn't say anything and settled for charging. Naruto smirked. He leant back, allowing the cut of the tanto in the root member's hand to go harmlessly above him, his own kunai burrowing itself deep into the man's gut. He tugged the weapon free and threw it over to his left hand. Spinning, he planted the kunai in the back of another root Anbu's skull as he tried to run past. Naruto smiled, jumping back and pulling out a single shuriken and throwing it. Futon. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The single shuriken become 20 each, encased in deadly futon chakra. Naruto smiled as he watched another 2 root members drop dead. He watched 2 more jump back. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. 2 root members yelled, expelling 2 large spheres of fire at the still smiling blonde. Suijin. Suijinheki, Naruto muttered, spitting out a torrent of water to douse the 2 fireballs. Naruto jumped back again. The blonde brought his hands into a one-day to be infamous cross shape. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Both made only one hand sign. Naruto had practiced this particular combination jutsu until he could do it in his sleep. Futon. Atsugai. The original Naruto yelled, firing the attack at the unfortunate root Anbu. The clone smiled. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. The 2 root members died almost instantly. Naruto could feel the ungodly heat of the attack and hear his opponent's skin crackle as the fat ignited under the heat. Naruto rolled his neck. Well, that was easy. A scream came from behind him. Another root Anbu was making off with Kushina. Naruto gritted his teeth. Not fucking happening. The race through 3 hand seals: ox, rabbit and monkey. The Chidori actually consisted of 9 hand seals, but a master of the attack could cut that time down by 2/3. The chakra gathered around his hand, white and luminous. He lowered himself like a sprinter waiting for the go signal. The ever-familiar sound of 1,000 birds chirping filled the air. Naruto looked up at the fleeing root Anbu. Chidori! The blonde screamed to the sky and dashed forward, passing his students almost instantly, the Chidori in his hand tearing up the ground. Naruto activated his Sharingan. He closed 4 meters, 3, 2, 1. His left hand went out and grabbed Kushina, throwing her off the root member's shoulder. His right hand came forward and tore right through the man's chest. The root operative looked down. His body was shredded. A gaping hole in his chest right over his lungs, that still contained Naruto's hand. The blonde closed his eyes, allowing the Sharingan to leave them before looking back at his genin. "You alright?" he asked, looking at Kushina. The red-haired girl shook for a moment before crying and burying her face in his chest. Naruto just held her and let her cry her troubles away. He recognized the insignia on the Anbu masks. Root, Danzo would pay for this. Danzo would pay dearly. More importantly, he would die, slowly. Naruto stroked Kushina's hair and whispered kind and reassuring words to her. The girl's shaking seemed to stop, until she looked at the carnage around them. Kushina held her hands over her mouth and sprinted over to the bushes, currently occupied by Nawaki and Mikoto, and began throwing up with them. Naruto sighed. He had a lot of work to do. He quickly substituted a log in the clearing for a model cow. The terrified cry of cow filled the clearing and all 3 of his genin jumped out. Naruto sighed. Morons, they hadn't even checked for explosive tags. Not that it mattered, there were none on that cow. He smiled at his genin. Well, time to go home, boy and girls, onward, he said, smiling and walking away. Boom. The clearing behind them was leveled and more than 10 trees were destroyed by the blast. Okay, maybe he had been wrong about those explosive tags after all. Kushina ran up to walk beside Naruto and was soon joined by Nawaki and Mikoto. Looked like none of them were used to seeing death. Naruto gritted his teeth. He would make Danzo pay. Naruto almost sighed in relief when he saw the gates of Konoha come into view. His genin had refused to be without him for more than 5 minutes for the last 3 days. 3 fucking days. He needed space, goddammit. The blonde Uzumaki sighed. Stupid Danzo. His blood boiled. The Warhawk would pay. Still, it was the first time they had seen anybody killed, so he was more than ready to cut them some slack. Naruto walked over to the shack meant for arrivals to check into. Team 5 back from AC turned a rank mission. He said nonchalantly, looking at the gate guards before his eyes bulged out of his head. Sitting there looking at him in utter amazement were Izumo and Kotetsu. Naruto felt his breath hitch. Those two had died in the first 6 months of the war and died like heroes. The two Chunin were far more skilled than they had ever let on. Taking down 2 full battalions of white Zetsu before dying. Naruto had turned up too late to save them, but the 2 Eternal Gate Guards, as they were called, had killed every invading Zetsu before dying. Both had smiles on their faces when their bodies were found. Izumo, Kotetsu? Naruto asked, sounding shaken. Makoto looked at him oddly. Naruto never looked shaken. The 2 guards gathered their thoughts. Sorry, you got the wrong guys, my name's Maimo and this guy's Kumo. The Izumo look-alike gave him a quick once-over. But Izumo and Kotetsu are our son's names. How did you know that? Naruto placed a hand on the back of his head and rubbed it sheepishly. Holy hell, what were the odds? Sorry, but I had no idea those were your son's names. You guys just reminded me of 2 people I met called Izumo and Kotetsu. Naruto said, smiling brightly. The 2 men nodded in understanding. I just hope our kids don't turn out like us. Maimo sighed. Got that right, they call the 2 of us the Eternal Gate Guards. Kumo lamented before sighing as well. Naruto couldn't help it, he burst out laughing. Signing the entrance book he walked away, genin in tow, chortling all the while. When they arrived in the center of Konoha, Naruto turned back to his 3 charges. Okay, then I just have to go and give the mission report to the Hokage and the money will be deposited into your accounts. With the appearance of those fake Anbu, the mission will be classified as a high B to low A in rank, so there will be more put in than you were expecting. Last but not least, don't mention our little vacation or we will all get in trouble. Just pass it off as we stayed for 2 days with the client at Tazuna Guy because he wanted to gamble. Most if not all should buy that excuse, and those that don't will probably find it too much trouble to get truth out of you. Dismissed. Naruto finished smiling at his genin. Nawaki and Makoto nodded and walked off, though they still looked uncertain about leaving. Kushina, he noted, stayed behind for some reason. Something you need, Kushina? Naruto asked his miniature mother, student. The redhead nodded, a small blush on her face. Could I come with you? She asked in a small voice. Naruto considered it for a second. On one hand, this could get ugly quickly. On the other, Nawaki and Makoto had family to help them get used to things like seeing people killed and killing others. Kushina had no one, at least not in Konoha. She would probably feel better being near someone she knew. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Oh hell, why not? Fine, it's hopefully going to be boring though. He advised the redhead. That's fine. Naruto nodded and gestured for her to follow. But sensei, what happens if it's not boring? Kushina asked in an innocent tone. Naruto smirked. Well then I guess things will be very, very interesting then, won't they? The redhead nodded, not quite understanding. Before walking after the blonde Jonin as he made his way to the tower. Naruto gave the Hokage's secretary a lazy wave. Yo, Jonin Narukami. Naruto, here to report a successful mission. Is the old monkey in for me to see? Naruto asked as politely as he could. The secretary's eyes widened and Kushina's mouth dropped open. What kind of person called the Hokage an old monkey? Sorry Naruto-san, but he is in a meeting with the joint councils right now. The secretary replied, still not quite over the way he referred to the Hokage. Naruto's smile turned sadistic and Kushina shivered. She knew that smile, the same one was on his face before he started throwing model cows covered in explosives at them. When he had that smile on, things never ended well. Is Shimura Danzo in this meeting? Naruto inquired. The secretary nodded and Naruto gave her a flirtatious grin, before taking her hand and kissing it. Thank you for that wonderful news, Tenshi-san. He said, smiling coyly at the secretary who seemed to be enjoying the treatment. Kushina felt a small pang of pain in her heart. Naruto quickly righted himself, smiling at the secretary. What room if you please, Tenshi-san? Our room 74, straight up the steps and 4th door on your left on the 3rd floor. Naruto nodded to the woman and walked up the steps, Kushina following closely behind. He sighed looking at the door to the meeting room before taking out a storage scroll and smiling. Naruto turned to Kushina, his previously cheerful expression gone. Kushina, if anything happens stay behind me, okay? He doubted it would, but this was Danzo he was about to piss off. Naruto was not taking chances. The Uzumaki heiress nodded, a slightly worried expression on her face. Naruto turned around, looked at the door for a second before shrugging. Then pulled his leg back and kicked the door off its hinges. Kushina's jaw made close acquaintance with the floor. Who the hell did things like that? The door crashed through the room, embedding itself in the wall opposite. The Hokage stared at the doorway, currently housing a very angry-looking Narukami Naruto. All his time spent with the young man, the blonde had always been laughing and joking, but now his face and more importantly his eyes looked as cold as ice. Naruto stalked into the room, an Anbu operative charged, his sword aiming for Naruto's neck. The blonde had a kunai out and coated in futon chakra before anyone could blink. Severing the sword near the guard, while spinning before planting his elbow in the Anbu's face, shattering his mask, the man went down hard. The second operative dropped from behind, Naruto's leg hooked up, catching the dull edge of the ninjutsu with his heel. The pushing it off onto a different angle and clotheslining the unfortunate Anbu. The Anbu met the floor with such force his head actually cracked the concrete. The blonde Uzumaki continued his walk forward like nothing had ever happened, pulling out a scroll and throwing it in front of the Hokage. Sarutobi-san, you have exactly 10 seconds to tell me why my team was attacked by Konoha Anbu. The Hokage looked at him strangely. What do you mean, Naruto-san? The blonde looked angry. When my team was returning from their mission to Kawa no Kuni, we were attacked by 7 men wearing Anbu masks, carrying the emblem of Konoha. Along with the insignia for root or NE on their masks. I killed the attackers, but I cannot overlook the threat that these men posed to my students. So tell me why an organization attached to Konoha attacked my students, or so help me I will bring this tower down around your ears. Naruto hissed the last part out. He was angry at Danzo beyond all belief right now. But he couldn't go straight for the old warhawk until he had more than circumstantial evidence, so he would settle for making his life harder. The old Sarutobi looked at the blonde, counsel forgotten. This had Danzo written all over it, though he did doubt that he would ever actually be able to prove that. Do you have any proof of this, Naruto-san? The blonde nodded, pointing to the scroll in front of the Hokage. Inside that contains the masks of 5 of the 7 operatives. I destroyed 2 of them with an attack and a sample of their blood, so you can run a cross-reference for it. Now tell me why my team was attacked by Konoha shinobi Sarutobi. Naruto yelled the last word at the aging leader, who took it stoically. It was well within the young man's rights to be more than a little angry after all. Naruto-san, I do not know anything about this, however I can and will look into it. As root was supposedly shut down on my orders, of that I can assure you. Naruto gave a brief nod, before sighing and bowing to the Hokage. I am sorry for interrupting your council meeting, Sarutobi-sama, but I take threats to my students very seriously. Naruto sighed and looked back up at the old man before smiling and turning to walk out. Boy! Came the yell from the shinobi portion of the council, from a man with short black hair and coal-black eyes. Yes? Naruto asked, sounding clearly annoyed. The man bristled with indignation. I am the head of the Uchiha clan, you will show me respect. The man snapped at him. Naruto gave him a sarcastic grin in return. Did you say something? Sorry, but you can have respect when you earn it. He drawled back, getting a warm feeling in his chest while feeling incredibly lazy. He knew this feeling. Kakashi was proud of him for some reason or another. The Uchiha clan head looked like he was about to blow a gasket at Naruto's remark. You little bastard, an Uchiha was supposed to teach your squad, did you know that? You should not be teaching my daughter or the heiress of the Uzumaki. It is a travesty for any but an Uchiha to teach another Uchiha. Naruto had enough of the man's rant and threw a kunai at the screaming Uchiha, who couldn't move quite fast enough and ended up with a cut cheek. Listen and listen closely, because I will not repeat myself. I do not care who you are or where you're from or what bitch birthed you, Uchiha. Naruto snarled at the clan leader. The entire room, stunned at the blonde's outburst, stayed silent. If you have a fucking problem with me, then you sure as hell better be able to back it the fuck up. Naruto picked the Uchiha clan head up by the shirt and slammed him against the wall. The entire council was gaping at him. No one had ever done something like this before. Naruto let the Uchiha clan head go and turned to walk out, gesturing to a stunned Kushina. So I had better be able to back it up, huh? Came the voice from behind him. Naruto turned to see the Uchiha clan head staring at him with barely restrained hatred. An untested boy like you having an Uchiha and the heiress to the Uzumaki on your squad is a travesty. I challenge you for that right. Naruto looked at the Uchiha for a second, before snapping his neck to each side. So what are the terms? Naruto asked lowly, his anger simmering below the surface. The Uchiha clan head smiled. Simple. If I win a sparring match against you, then you have to hand leadership of your squad over to the Uchiha clan as a collective. Naruto cocked his head to the side and nodded. And when I win? The Uchiha leader burst out laughing. You won't win, boy, but if by some miracle you do, then I will grant you one request that the Uchiha clan as a whole has to honor. Naruto smiled. Oh yes, that would be more than handy. Well then, if you don't mind, I will make my prize known now. The Uchiha nodded dismissively. If I win, then I want all of the Uchiha clan's collective knowledge of Kaden Jutsu, in such a form that it can be read without the use of a Sharingan. The council looked floored at his deceleration. The clan leaders had their eyes bulging out of their heads at the gift he wanted from the Uchiha clan. TT, those scrolls contain Uchiha only jutsu. I cannot just allow you to have them. The Uchiha clan head growled out. True, Naruto admitted, before smirking. However, in case like this where it's the result of a bet or a challenge like you have just presented me with, those rules are waived and I would be able to make full use of those techniques, even if they were supposed to be restricted to the Uchiha clan. Naruto finished smugly, his smile becoming bloodthirsty. The Uchiha clan head snarled at the blonde. Fine, I agree to your terms. The date for our match will be tomorrow at noon. Training Ground 5, the council will be in attendance as mediators for our match. Naruto nodded, smiling before walking out of the room, Kushina trailing behind. Here is inside. Now he had to replace that door. Why him? Sensei, was that really a good idea? Kushina asked, sounding worried. Naruto smiled down at the red head. Sure, it was Kushi-chan. Always a good idea to take a bet you won't lose. Naruto said proudly, missing the blush on Kushina's face at his way of calling her. The Uchiha, and there is nothing like your friend Makoto. He's just someone who over-relies on their Kekkei Genkai to win their fights, rather than using it as a trump card like you're supposed to. Naruto muttered the last bit. Sensei, with the way you're talking it sounds like you have a Kekkei Genkai. Kushina said, laughing. Naruto thought about it for a second. That's because I do. Naruto admitted, sighing. Kushina looked up at him in slight amazement. But when you fought those Anbu in the office or the ones that attacked us, I didn't see you use anything that looked like a Kekkei Genkai. Naruto smiled at her, before ruffling Kushina's hair. I did use it in that fight outside the village, I just made sure that you guys didn't see it. But for the most part, one try not to. My Kekkei Genkai is a trump card to get me out of really bad situations. Not, as most people who have one would tell you, the first solution to any problem. Naruto admitted, rubbing the back of his head in a sheepish manner. At any rate, do you feel okay now? Kushina looked down. She wasn't okay, not yet. But she could cope, of that she was sure. I'll be fine, sensei. The Uzumaki heiress assured him. Naruto smiled at her. Tell Nawaki and Makoto to be at Training Ground 5 at noon tomorrow, okay? I think it should be okay for you guys to sit in on this fight. Kushina nodded and turned away, before stopping and turning back. Sensei, what Kekkei Genkai do you have? Kushina asked, sounding a little apprehensive. Naruto didn't answer, instead opting to just turn around, and Kushina came face to face with two fully mature Sharingan eyes. Kushina was almost bouncing off the walls. In fact, Naruto was quite sure that if Training Ground 5 had any walls, she would have been. Naruto sighed. The bastard was already 10 minutes late. He remembered Sasuke's stunt at the Chunin exams, typical fucking Uchiha. The assembled council was starting to look a little annoyed. Well, at least that was something. For once, Naruto wasn't the only person pissed off with the Uchiha. Naruto took a brief look at his students. Nawaki looked bored. Kushina exited and Makoto nervous, for him or for her father he wasn't sure. Naruto threw a look over his shoulder, and whistled. It seemed like the whole of the Uchiha clan had turned out for this little fight. Okay, that was an exaggeration, but there were at least 100 of them, Naruto sighed. Glad you could finally join us, Uchiha-san. Naruto called out, smiling at the look of anger on the Uchiha clan head's face at the informal address. You will show me respect, boy. Clan head yelled out. Naruto sighed. Like I said before, respect is earned, not given. Oh, by the way, I never got your name. Naruto said, yawning. The man puffed out his chest. Uchiha Koken, clan head of the Uchiha. The man took a taijutsu stance and Naruto yawned. Well then, are we all ready? Naruto asked, sliding into his own stance. The current Hyuga clan head walked into the space between them. Uchiha Koken versus Narukami Naruto, Hajime. He swung his arm up, jumping backwards. The man got the feeling he did not want to be in the middle of this. Naruto blurred forward as the Uchiha activated his Sharingan. Naruto's fist came forward, and was pushed away. A leg came at his abdomen. Naruto sweeped it out of the way, jumping to deliver an axe kick to the clan head. He saw the Kuani positioned to stab him and changed his attack, letting the sole of his foot land on Koken's arm and pushing off into a jump. Naruto twisted in mid-air and threw a shuriken at the Uchiha, one coated in futon chakra. The Uchiha leaned back and allowed the attack to pass over his head, smirking right up until Naruto buried his foot in the man's stomach, sending him flying. The entire exchange took less than 10 seconds. The Uchiha flipped himself in mid-air, before blurring through hand seals. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Naruto smirked and slammed his hands together. Ninpo Kekai. Tengai Hojin. The barrier sprang up, holding back the flames. Naruto wanted to end this quickly. Oh, Koken was good, he would give the man that. But Naruto was an S-ranked shinobi. Koken was a low to mid-A rank. There was a reason most S-ranked shinobis didn't work together. It was because you actually had to be an S-class to fight an S-class. You were that strong, you didn't need to work as a team. Naruto decided to end it. The Uchiha clan head charged forward. Naruto smirked, chakra gathering in his hand. He pushed it, faster and faster, making it more condensed, more concentrated, until he was holding the heart of a storm in his hand. Koken lashed out with a fist. Naruto caught the offending limb and dragged the man in closer, slamming the spinning orb of chakra into his gut. Rasengan. The attack ripped through the clan head's clothes and skin, before pulverizing his bones and shattering most of his ribcage. Koken was flung back, impacting with a tree before going through it and the four behind that one. Naruto turned to his team. He won't be getting back up from that. Take the next 3 days off and meet back here on Monday. The three just nodded, not trusting their voices. All three's jaws were firmly acquainted with the floor. Naruto turned to the Uchiha elders. I'll expect my winnings in 3 days. Naruto said pointedly, before walking off, leaving a stunned crowd. Naruto walked back to Konoha at a lazy pace, whistling all the way. Naruto let his body sway backwards as Makoto's kick flew over him. The blonde reached up, grabbing the leg, before pivoting and throwing the black-haired girl at Nawaki. The Senju heir's eyes went wide as he saw the Uchiha flying towards him. He abandoned the hand seals he had been making and got ready to catch the girl. Makoto hit the Senju with close to bone-shattering force, sending both of them flying. Naruto felt the ground under him rumble and jumped, deliberately leaving his arms hanging low. A pair of chains erupted from the earth, snaking around his outstretched limbs. The blonde smiled as he spotted Kushina, who was smirking at him triumphantly. I got you, sensei. The redhead declared. Naruto sported a smirk of his own and Kushina's blood ran cold. You know, Kushi-chan, there is a difference between catching someone and me allowing you to catch me. Naruto stated. The redhead looked confused before Naruto gripped the chakra chains and swung them with all his might. Kushina's eyes widened with horror as she was lifted from the ground by the force of Naruto's swing, and she found herself flying through the air. Naruto smirked before slamming the unfortunate Uzumaki into her teammates, sending all three of them flying as the chains dissipated from the impact. Naruto leapt onto a tree branch which was overlooking the three downed genin before leaping into the air. He rushed through the 7 hand seals with a speed that only a veteran could. Horse, tiger, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger. Naruto inhaled deeply, air saturating his lungs. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu, Naruto yelled, expelling the orb of flame from his mouth. The attack raced at the genin. Makoto looked up at the fireball racing towards Kushina, Nawaki and her. It was at least 3 body lengths across and 4 high. She could hear water running behind them. Her sensei must have dumped them there for them to be able to defend. Makoto was about to begin her hand seals when she realized. the defense she was planning wouldn't work. Her defense sweetened. Misurapa wouldn't cut it, her sensei was smart, scary smart. He would have to know that her first defense would be Misurapa. The jutsu was only AC rank but would defeat the fireball. That was when it clicked. The trap was the fireball. Misurapa would put out the fire, but then what? Makoto's eyes widened. It would leave a large amount of water in front of them, something a skilled opponent, such as her sensei, could take advantage of. Probably by sending the water back at them with a futon. Daitopa then electrifying it with a raiden changed her plan of defense. Misurapa would not work, it left too much water in front of them, so she just needed the water to be spread out enough that her sensei couldn't take advantage of that fact. Makoto's hands blurred, she saw Kushina and Nawaki doing the same in her peripheral vision. She just hoped they all had the same idea. Suijin. Suijinheki. All three genin announced, spraying a huge volume of water from their mouths. Suijinheki was a B-ranked Suijin ninjutsu, so it would defeat the fireball in both nature type and in ninjutsu rank, but more importantly it forced the water away from the three with such force their sensei wouldn't be able to send it back at them. Naruto smiled as he saw the water wave crush the fireball, sending upwards a giant gout of steam. The Jonin smiled. That had been some good thinking by all three of them. The Suijinheki prevented him from turning the jutsu back at them, and with the force the water was launched with allowed them a means to counter-attack as well. They were getting better. Naruto jumped and stuck to the underside of a branch, smiling at his genin's progress. Their ability to attack and defend at the same time was impressive, but they really should have thought ahead a bit more, after all. With all of the steam hanging around the battlefield right now, he could easily pull off a sneak attack. The three should have dispersed the steam with a futon technique the moment the fireball was put out. Still, for a bunch of genin that was more than passable. Naruto smirked as he held his hands up. Kirigakure no jutsu. With all the steam, his team would not be able to tell the difference. The mist mingled with the steam, making it harder to see. The blonde stayed silent as he crept toward his genin over the branches. Kushina looked around. Was it just her, or was the steam getting denser? Her eyes widened. Oh shit, Kirigakure no jutsu. The redhead blurred through hand seals. She wasn't really one for ninjutsu, but her sensei had forced her to become at least proficient in the art. Futon. Daitopa. The young Uzumaki yelled at the top of her lungs. The wind technique pushing the combined mist and steam away. Kushina whirled looking for her teammates. Her eyes widened. Nawaki was already on the ground out cold, and Naruto was right behind Makoto. Makoto! Yelled Kushina in warning. Naruto's hand descended and the Uchiha's eyes rolled into the back of her head as she was rendered unconscious. Naruto blurred out of Kushina's sight. The Uzumaki heiress felt a stinging sensation before everything went dark. Naruto looked down at the fallen figures of his three students. They were getting better. Not quite ready to survive the hell that was war, but they were getting better. Naruto wasn't even sure that he would ever feel that his genin were ready to face war. He had gotten far too attached to them to even want to consider them put onto a battlefield. Naruto knew the horror of war. The third shinobi war was coming. The blonde knew that. Naruto just hoped that he had a bit longer before he had to put his students to the test in that hell. The blonde picked Kushina up in a bridal carry while creating two clones for Nawaki and Makoto. Naruto took to the trees, jumping back towards the entrance to Training Ground 5, Konoha. The blonde hadn't really spent much time around the village. He was always either training to improve his own skills, training his genin, or taking missions. Besides, he knew the layout and the families well enough that Naruto didn't really need to spend much time inside Konoha. The Narutos laid his genin team down of the soft grass at the entrance to the training blonde's side. They did good. Nawaki had a good feeling for ninjutsu and was above average at taijutsu, though he did need to learn not to rely on his clan's forms so much. Things like that would make him over-specialized and ridged, like the Hyuga. Naruto would not let that happen to one of his students. Next was Makoto. The girl showed a strong aptitude for ninjutsu. Then again, that was something he expected from an Uchiha, but also for genjutsu. Naruto couldn't use genjutsu, though he could break just about all of them, so the blonde really wasn't much help there. He had made a mental not to ask around the village for a genjutsu user so he could ask them to train Makoto. But Naruto wanted to get her above the genin norm first. Finally, there was Kushina. The redhead was definitely not a ninjutsu user. It wasn't that she was bad at using ninjutsu per se. but rather that in comparison to her other strengths her talent with ninjutsu was negligible at best. Not that Naruto hadn't pounded the basics of several jutsu into the Uzumaki's head. Kushina may have not held a great amount of talent for the art. But Naruto would not let her neglect her training in the art just because of that. That being said, the girl's aptitude for Tai and Kenjutsu was amazing. In addition to that, the redhead was always getting better with those chains of hers. Naruto had not yet started teaching Kushina the art of the sword in earnest just yet, preferring to bring her other forms up to scratch first. That being said, what he saw when he did train her was amazing. The girl was a wonder with a sword just waiting to be discovered. Naruto guessed that was something he had inherited from his mother, a love of blade work. The blonde looked up at the sky and sighed. It had been almost 2 months since his match against Koken, and since then the Uchiha clan would not leave him alone. They were trying, and quite desperately, to get Naruto under their thumb. Trying everything from bribing him to offering marriage contracts. At one point a contract for Makoto herself was offered to the blonde. Hell, the Uchiha clan offered to adopt him as one of their own. Naturally Naruto turned them down. He was an Uzumaki to the bone. Even if he wasn't using the name, he would not be joining another clan unless it was by marriage, and even then it would not be for a political marriage. His students had also not stopped hounding him over the Rasengan. Naruto knew he shouldn't have used the attack. After all, his father had been made famous for creating it along with the Hiraishin no Jutsu. Naruto really hoped he hadn't screwed up the timeline too badly with that little stunt. Though knowing that because of his luck, that was probably a vain hope. He looked down at his genin. They were ready. While he had been working the group's basic skills and teamwork over the last 2 months, that wasn't all he was doing. Every now and then Naruto would throw something different at the three, such as a lesson in Fuinjutsu or Kenjutsu. Just to see the kind of aptitude the genin had in that area. Anytime they excelled, Naruto filed it away so he could teach them later. Now that they had the basics and teamwork above genin level, Naruto was ready to start teaching them some new skills. The blonde knew that Nawaki and Makoto's families were teaching them on the side, so the blonde planned to pay some more attention to Kushina. Not that he would neglect their training, only that Naruto would allow a little more freedom to Kushina in what she learned. For example, when the members of his genin team met, they did so every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. The other 2 days they had off. Naruto knew for a fact that Makoto and Nawaki's families trained them in their family arts on these days. Naruto would extend the same offer to Kushina. Since there were no Uzumaki in Konoha besides her, Naruto would offer the redhead some extra training on the days off so that she wouldn't feel left behind when the Uchiha and Senju started upping Makoto and Nawaki's training in the clan's arts. Something that Naruto suspected they would do soon, as the two were starting to show a lot of growth as ninja and as people. The blonde heard a groan and looked down as Nawaki woke up. "What the hell hit me?" the Senju heir asked blearily. Naruto smiled. The Senju reminded him a lot of himself when he was younger. He had reflected on that in private once. He suspected it was that resemblance that had gotten Tsunade to come back to Konoha. "That would be me, Nawaki-kun," Naruto said, smiling down at the brown-haired boy, who looked at Naruto for a second before sighing. "Knocked us unconscious again, sensei?" the Senju said with a small chuckle. This was how all their spars ended after all. Rather than try to beat the blonde, the three genin used it as a test to see how long they could survive for. Naruto nodded at the genin's statement, before smiling at his young charge. "You guys did really well. 2 months ago you couldn't last more than 10 minutes against me at that level, now you're up to 45. Naruto said, prizing the Senju heir and his teammates, who were still unconscious. Nawaki blushed slightly under the blonde's praise. Naruto always gave praise where it was due, but never when it wasn't earned. "Ah, but we still can't beat you now, can we, sensei?" Nawaki replied, smiling at the blonde. Naruto shrugged and gave a mischievous grin in return. "I wouldn't be much of a jonin if I couldn't take down 3 genin, Nawaki-kun, clan heirs or not," Naruto pointed out. The Senju cocked his head to the side for a second before nodding. The blonde had a good point. "Su thought about teaching us that Rasengan yet?" Nawaki asked innocently. Naruto chuckled. Before bopping the Senju on the head lightly, after displaying the attack, all 3 of them had wanted to learn it. Hell, he had other jonin coming and asking if they could trade some of their own jutsu in exchange for learning it. Hell, the Hyuga had offered him marriage contract. Naturally, Naruto turned them all down and went to Sarutobi and had the jutsu registered as a personal jutsu so that anyone caught copying it would be dealt with severely. Not that Naruto was too worried about someone figuring out the Rasengan. The attack was just shape manipulation taken to its highest possible level after all, making it all but impossible to copy unless you already knew its inner workings, something Naruto was in no hurry to share. But something he was worried about: some people making bastardized versions of the attack, which was something the blonde would not tolerate. Not yet, Nawaki-kun, maybe one day. But sensei, that's what you always tell me. The senju pouted as his attempt to gain the awesome jutsu failed miserably, just like all Kushina, Makoto and his previous attempts did. Naruto sighed and laid back on the grass sighing. Those three had come a long way. Hell, they had even completed another 12 C-rank missions, no D-ranks. He had to go through that hell himself and would not make his genin do so, though the temptation to see the looks of despair on their faces as they found out they had to clean kennels for the Inuzuka, or some such, was oh so tempting. He saw a hawk flying above and was instantly on alert. The bird let out 3 harsh cries and flew away. Naruto stood up and looked at Nawaki. Nawaki-kun, please tell Kushina and Makoto they can go home when they wake up. I have something I have to take care of. Naruto said, walking off. Did it have something to do with that hawk? Nawaki asked, wondering if it was some kind of signal. Naruto snorted, but on the inside he praised his student for his sharp intellect. Hell no. Naruto dead-pained to Nawaki, before smiling with a perverse grin on his face. Today is the day the new Icha comes out. Naruto stated, drooling, before disappearing in a shunshin, not hearing Nawaki's grumble about stupid pervy senseis. The blonde reappeared inside the Hokage Tower lobby, his face in a pure business expression as he walked towards the Sandame's office. The door was opened by an Anbu. Naruto nodded his thanks. The Anbu dipped his head in return. It was nice to see someone at least acknowledge that he had done something. Most just ignored the Anbu when they did things like that. Naruto walked inside seeing the other Jonin present. He did note Hitaki Sakumo, Tsunade Senju and Jiraiya. 3 legends in one place. Naruto made a mental note to keep a close eye on Sakumo once Kakashi was born. He would make sure his white-haired sensei kept his father this time around. The Sandame scanned the room. Almost all his Jonin were here. His eyes fell on Naruto. The boy really was an enigma. That technique he used, the Rasengan, was incredible, and he cared for his students before anything else. Yet he never walked around Konoha or got to know its people, but seemed to care for the village. But how could the young man care if he didn't know the people? The Sandame shook his head to clear it of his thoughts. He needed to focus right now. Hiruzen looked around the room again. Yes, all of the Jonin senseis were here. He could start his announcement. The others it didn't really affect. They could be told later. Thank you for coming, Hiruzen stated, his eyes surveying the room again. As you all may know, in 6 months the biannual Chunin exams will be held in Konoha. Naruto's mind shut down. What the hell was going on? The Chunin exams weren't put into practice until after the Third Shinobi War. Naruto knew that as fact. Jiraiya had at least pounded some basic history into his head. He would need to consult with Akane about this. This changed everything. If his knowledge of the timeline was this far out, who knows what else had been changed? The Sandame continued, and Naruto shook his thoughts off and paid attention. I would like the Jonin senseis of all teams to come forward and please state if you will or will not be nominating your teams. Naruto, Jiraiya, Tsunade and several others stepped forward. Naruto ignored the first 3 but started paying attention again when he saw Tsunade step forward. I Senju Tsunade Jonin of Konoha do hereby nominate Uchiha Tayaki, Junichi Amy and Kan of Team 4 for the Chunin exams as their Jonin sensei. Tsunade said confidently before stepping back in line. Naruto wondered why Tsunade had an Uchiha as a student. After what Koken had said, he honestly didn't think that he would let anyone but an Uchiha train his clan members. Then again, Tsunade was a member of the Densetsu no Sanin. Proud bastard probably made an exception and allowed her the honor of teaching an Uchiha or some such. Naruto sighed and stepped forward, feeling all eyes on him. The blonde sighed. What can he do? On one hand, letting his team into the exams would be a great way for them to gauge how strong they were and how far they had to go. On the other hand, they would be indisposed for a few days and miss out on training. More importantly, they could die and he would not be there to save them this time. Naruto sighed. He knew what he was going to do. Kushina, Makoto and Nawaki would kill him if he didn't nominate them. Man, he wasn't even Kushina or Makoto's boyfriend and he already felt whipped. Now he knew what Shikamaru felt like when Naruto teased him about his relationship with Tenmari. Naruto took a deep breath. I Narukami Naruto Jonin of Uzushiogakure do hereby nominate Senju Nawaki, Uchiha Makoto and Uzumaki Kushina of Team 5 for the Chunin exams as their Jonin sensei. Naruto stated, drawing gasps from around the room. He sighed. Was this how Kakashi felt when he nominated them as rookies? Geez, you'd think that someone who could easily take apart an A-ranked ninja like Koken would have their judgment trusted, but no. Tsunade rounded on the blonde, grasping the front of his vest. What did you just say? The blonde asked in a low tone. Naruto just looked at her impassively. I said I nominate my team for the Chunin exams, Senju-san. Do you have a problem with that? Naruto asked coldly. Tsunade looked at him, fire in her eyes. They only just graduated, they are not ready for something like this. Don't you get it, they could possibly die? Tsunade practically spat in Naruto's face, who still looked impassive. Are you done? The blonde asked, his voice cold enough to turn water to ice. Sunday looked at him, taken back for a second before her rage returned full force. Hell no, I'm not done. I am not letting my little brother go off and get himself killed for your pride. Tsunade snarled at the blonde. Naruto placed his hand next to his kunai pouch, something all the Jonin noted and tensed. Senju, get your hands off me before I remove them from you. Naruto hissed at Tsunade, who seemed startled by his anger, enough so that she let go of his vest. The moment that your little brother put on that Hide 8 he so proudly wears, he became an adult. He can drink, smoke, have and die for his home because he wears that Hide 8. More importantly, when he put on that Hide 8 he became my soldier. This is not a clan affair, nor is it something you have any control over. I am his Jonin sensei, not you, Tsunade. Naruto finished and turned back to Hiruzen, who looked a little taken back by the whole scene. As I said, Hokage-sama, I would like to nominate Team 5 for the exams. The aging Hokage nodded. Naruto's anger faded. The blonde would admit that Tsunade's anger was reasonable, but he hated seeing people underestimating his students. They had worked hard, damn it, and he would be damned if he just let other people, even if they were family, talk about his students when they had no idea of their full capabilities. Naruto tuned out as they started nominating teams again, before turning back in when Jiraiya stepped forward. I, Jiraiya Jonin of Konoha, do hereby nominate Namikaze Minato, Hyuga Hiyashi and Inuzuka Sume of Team 7 for the Chunin exams as their Jonin sensei. The white-haired man finished and stepped back. Naruto was about to tune out again when he heard a whisper from behind him. Figures the Namikaze clan would have their golden boy put in the exams, wonder how he'll do, came the light voice of a Jonin from behind him. Naruto's mind stopped again. Namikaze clan? His father wasn't part of a clan, only his mother was. What the hell was going on here? Was it the timeline that was out, or was it something else? No, it couldn't be the timeline. Even if the timeline was out, a little time wouldn't affect clan status. Actually no, it could. But his father was an orphan, not a clan member, and no clan called Namikaze had ever existed to his knowledge, so that just left one other option. The Kamui hadn't sent him through time but rather through dimensions. Well, it wasn't like he hadn't thought that it was a possibility. Still, with the way everything had been going so far, Naruto had just assumed he had been sent through time instead. The blonde gulped. He needed to talk to Akane about this, and fast. Naruto's was pulled out of his thoughts as Hiruzen started to speak again. Very well then, teams 4, 5 and 7 will be entered into this year's Chunin exams. The exams start in 6 months. Have your genin ready by then. The forms for enrollment can be collected any time from now until a day before the exams. You are free to leave. The Jonins nodded as one. Tsunade turned to give Naruto another piece of her mind but found only leaves dropping to the floor as the blonde exited via Shunshin. Naruto figured he could pick up the forms tomorrow. Right now he needed to speak to Akane, and the faster the better. Kushina walked through the front door of her apartment. It wasn't a large affair. Combined kitchen, living and dining, a single bathroom and her bedroom. Compared to what she had lived in when she was in Uzu, it was small. Not that Kushina minded, at least there was no wasted space. The redhead sighed as she collapsed down on her couch. That training session was beyond tiring, then again they always were. Naruto would push them to their breaking point then back off. then push them to it again and again, forcing them to improve faster and faster. The blonde was a slave driver when it came to training, even though he occasionally said he was a bad teacher. Kushina didn't believe that for a second. Every lesson was easy to understand. Then he expanded upon it, let them ask questions and explained what they didn't understand, before summarizing the lesson. All the time a monologue was running. When fighting, dodge then counter. If they were sneaking, embrace the shadows. See but don't be seen. For jutsu, feel the flow of the chakra and direct it. Never try to use a technique you don't understand, and so on. The man really did make his lessons stick, no matter what. Then there was what he focused on when they trained. Kushina was far from a stupid girl. No one would ever call her a genius, but she was no fool. When they had first graduated the academy, Makoto, Nawaki and her had been somewhere between mid to high genin level. Now they were somewhere between low to mid chunin level. The blonde had quite literally pounded the basics into them. The moment he found even the slightest deficiency, they were drilled on it until it was perfect. Be the problem in strategy, battlefield tactics, ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, kenjutsu, hell even fuinjutsu or assassination were drilled until their basics were perfect. But for all his training, Kushina had to ask one question about Naruto: why? None of the other genin teams were training even half as hard as they were. Sure, she could just put that down to him being a training maniac, but it felt like something more. Kushina had always trusted her instincts, and right now they were telling her there was more to her. Hell, the entire team's training the Naruto was letting on. Her musing was broken by a knock on the door, dragging her exhausted body to the door. She flung it open. This had better be good, or else someone was going to be in pain. Kushina's eyes widened in shock when the blonde, whom her thoughts had just been on, stood there with a serious look on his face. "Hi sensei, what can I do for you?" Kushina asked nervously. She felt a blush creep up her face. Damn these hormones. Naruto looked distracted as he looked at his student. "Good afternoon, Kushina. Tomorrow's rest day has been cancelled. Please meet me at training ground 5 at 6 am tomorrow." Kushina nodded and Naruto smiled down at the girl. "Make sure to take care of yourself and eat well before you arrive tomorrow. It's going to be a big day." Kushina nodded again. "Thanks sensei," the redhead said as brightly as she could in such an exhausted state. "I'll see you tomorrow then, but I have to ask what the emergency is." Naruto just chuckled. "You'll find out when you get there," the blonde stated cryptically, before turning to walk away. "You have a nice night, Kushi-chan," Naruto said, walking away towards the stairs and to his apartment on the level above this one. "See ya later sensei," the Uzumaki called out to the retreating back of the blonde, who just waved over his shoulder. Naruto heard the door close and felt a little bit of nostalgia as he climbed the stairs to his apartment. It seemed even when he was a child his mother had been closer to him than he thought. After all, the apartment that Kushina was living in now was the same one that the third had given Naruto when the orphanage tried to throw him out. Naruto sat in the center of his apartment, eyes closed in the lotus position, his breathing slow and controlled. He focused on the feeling deep inside him and allowed himself to be drawn in. He felt his consciousness slipping away to somewhere else. The blonde opened his eyes, the warm noonday sun warming his body. Naruto sighed. The area inside his mind was dense woodland. The warm sun overhead and a clear lake nearby. The blonde walked forward towards the small cottage at the center of the clearing. Sure, he could have made it someplace different, but Akane had told him she actually preferred not being in her gigantic demon fox form. So she got a cottage in the middle of a clearing instead. Naruto knocked on the door. Sure, he could just walk in, but he kind of wanted to live. The door swung open, revealing a rather sleepy-looking redhead. Long and unruly hair that reached her lower back and was ruffled by her just getting out of bed. Red eyes with no slit, pale skin. A tribal tattoo that stretched from her left ankle to right shoulder, marking everything in between with a flowing and interlocking web of ink. The woman had long legs and round hips. Her breasts were on the smaller side, looking at around a B cup, but it really just added to her allure. Crimson red lipstick, her rather pronounced canine teeth just showing. "Huh, Naru-chan? What are you doing here?" Akane asked sleepily. Naruto debated coming back later. After all, Akane enjoyed her sleep. However, this really was too important to wait. "Sorry for waking you up, Akane-chan, but would you mind if I came in?" Naruto asked. Akane moved aside and gestured for Naruto to come in. "That's fine, Naru-chan, I'll put on some tea." Naruto just nodded. Akane had been very abrasive when they first met, but after 17 years together they eventually managed to work something out. Akane came back a few minutes later holding a teacup and setting it down in front of the blonde Uzumaki. "So Naru-chan, what did you need?" Akane asked, still looking like she wanted to go back to bed. Naruto sipped the tea for a second before sighing. He told her everything from the fact they were probably in a different dimension to that he was no longer sure how accurate their information was anymore. The demoness slowly looked more and more awake as Naruto explained. If that was because she was waking up or the subject matter was so important it made her wake up, Naruto couldn't tell. The demoness looked at him for a few minutes after he finished. "We need to plan our next move," Akane said seriously. Naruto leaned back into the chair he was sitting on. "I'm all ears." Naruto dropped in front of his genin team, the three of him looking up at him curiously. "First things first, I've entered you in the Chunin exams," Naruto stated. The three genin just looked at him for about a second before Naruto was glomped by a red blur and a black blur. Kushina and Makoto thanking him repeatedly while Nawaki just grinned like a madman. After spending the next 5 minutes prying his team off him, Naruto looked at each of them for a second. "This means naturally that I will be picking up your training as well." The three looked at him in horror when he said that. Naruto didn't even bother to acknowledge them and instead brought out 3 pieces of paper from his pouch. "Do any of you know what these are?" Naruto questioned, getting blank looks from his genin in return. "This is chakra paper. I'm going to have you guys channel your chakra into it to find out what your elemental affinity is. If it burns, it's fire, crumbles earth, crinkles lightning, gets wet water, or splits, then it's wind." Naruto finished his impromptu lecture and handed out the paper. Giving the first one to Nawaki, the Senju channeled his chakra into the paper and promptly yelped and dropped it as it burst into flames. Naruto smiled, a fire type, which was good. Naruto was better at both wind and lightning, but fire came in as a close third. He handed the second piece to Makoto, who sighed. All Uchiha were fire types after all, and those who weren't were an embarrassment to the clan. She channeled her chakra and felt her mouth go dry. The paper crinkled. She was not attuned to fire but lightning. No, this could not be happening. Makoto started to hyperventilate. Kushina shook her friend back into the world of the living. "Makoto, what's wrong?" Kushina asked, concerned. Makoto got her breathing back under control. "SS-sensei, could I please have another piece of paper, please?" Naruto nodded and handed her another. Makoto channeled her chakra again. The paper crinkled. Tears began gathering in the Uchiha's eyes. Naruto wiped them away, causing the girl to look up at her sensei, who looked down at her with something approaching sorrow in his eyes. "What's wrong, Makoto-chan?" Naruto asked, concerned for his student. The girl started to tear up. "I'm attuned to lighting," the girl said simply. Naruto still couldn't see the problem. The Uchiha are fire users. To be otherwise is an embarrassment to the clan. Makoto repeated the words that had been told to her by her tutors. Naruto shook her a little and forced the girl to look at him, and Naruto smiled down at her. "Well, if you think you're an embarrassment to the clan, I'm a wind user," Naruto said in a joking tone. Makoto looked affronted. "But sensei, that might be fine for you, you're not an Uchiha, but for me, they might discard me, throw me out unless I prove to be better than a fire user. I know you're just trying to make me feel better, but please don't say things like that." Makoto finished. Naruto sighed, looking down at Makoto. He really hadn't wanted to tell them, at least not like this. Naruto looked sternly at his 3 genin. "What you are about to see will be told to no one unless I expressly give you permission. Am I clear?" The blonde said, gaining a startled chorus of "yes" from his 3 genin. Naruto closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were no longer the deep ocean blue the 3 were used to. In their place were 2 crimson irises slowly being circled by 3 tome. Naruto looked down at the 2 stunned genin and a smug-looking Kushina. "Sensei, why your eyes?" Makoto pointed out lightly. Naruto hugged the girl. "See, if you're talking about outcasts in the Uchiha clan, then you really couldn't be in better company," Naruto said in a cheerful voice, smiling down at the girl, who just nodded dumbly. Naruto turned his attention to Kushina, who channeled her chakra to the paper, which split in half. Naruto couldn't resist the smile that formed on his face. It was like this team was made for him, a fire, lightning and a wind user, his 3 best elements. "Now then, we are having a training session today. It's about 6:30 now and our training session will last until 1700, understand?" The three nodded and Naruto channeled a small amount of chakra into a seal on his right arm, a katana dropping into his waiting hand. You have only one objective, survive. With those words Naruto charged the three genin. Makoto could swear she heard her bones creak as she blocked another strike from her sensei. The Uchiha had originally thought that her sensei's training was insane, but with his new training regime she knew, Naruto had been taking it easy on them. His new level of training took insane and cranked it right the way up to 11. Before breaking the dial that said 11 and replacing it with one that went all the way up to 100 and somehow pushing it to 101. And then some of the things he had them do seemed to take insane and then throw it out the window before taking their training, as Naruto called it, beyond the impossible. After they managed to survive their 11-hour sparring session against him, the blonde had chosen to work on their taijutsu. When he told them that, the blonde added he would be taking a leaf out of Guy and Lee's book on the subject. When they had asked him who they were, the blonde just chuckled evilly, the same way he did before throwing exploding model cows at them. All three genin were instantly scared for their lives, for good reason. Makoto didn't know who Guy and Lee were, but if this was their training routine, then the men must be closer to beasts. When she said that to Naruto, the blonde had just smiled and replied, green beasts to be exact. All the while chuckling at some kind of privet joke. For the next month, Team 5 got up at 4 am and trained until 1800 or 6 p.m. every day. The day started with a relaxing, as Naruto called it, run around the entire village of Konoha 7 times, and when Naruto said run he meant sprint. Following that was taijutsu katas. The blonde was merciless even there. They did it with weights, on water, while running, dodging thrown weapons, while tree jumping. Naruto would assign some kind of exercise to be done while executing the katas at the same time. The blonde laughed while they did it, telling them it would teach them the power of youth. All the while cackling like a madman. Needless to say, the entire team wanted to kill him after day 1. Following the taijutsu katas, the blonde would train their chakra control. They did everything from water walking to kunai balancing, and hell, Naruto even showed them a few exercises that they never ever knew existed. Such as water sphere floating, which was exactly what it sounded like, floating a sphere of water over your hand using nothing but pure chakra control. What Naruto didn't tell them was that the sphere would blow up in their faces if they got it wrong. Makoto cursed the man for that. The day ended with Naruto teaching them some of his personal taijutsu style, though the blonde admitted that he hadn't come up with a name for it yet. When the month was finally over, the team celebrated as Naruto told them that now he would move on to teaching them other things while just maintaining their strength rather than trying to increase it. The cheers died immediately when the blonde told them that the level of hell had just doubled now that they had reached the appropriate strength to survive it. It was at that moment they learned what hell really was. The blonde was relentless. Everything he could think of for the next 4 months he pounded into them, from extra taijutsu to nen, gen, ken and even fuinjutsu. Hell, the blonde forced his 3 genin to master the first step of each of their nature manipulations in 2 months. They were spared nothing. Naruto's training was brutal and always to the point. His constant monologue always running. Every time a block wasn't quite perfect, they were punished for it. Every stance, form, technique had to be performed flawlessly. Naruto neither needed nor wanted that. The blonde demanded that. He had told the 3 of his genin Tsunade's reaction to placing them into the Chunin exams. Her reaction was just used by them like fuel. To prove her words wrong, they all pushed themselves to the brink to be better, faster, and stronger than any other genin team. Naruto saw their drive and used it to push them harder, all the while laughing not so quietly at his genin's misfortune. Then started laughing harder, as he pictured the misfortune of any genin that faced them in the exams. Makoto skidded along the ground, before pushing herself off the ground and snarling at the shadow clone in front of her and charging. The ground under her cracked with the force of her kicking off it. The black-haired girl closed, her left hand lashing out in a vicious hook at the blonde's face. Naruto's clone leaned back and allowed the attack to pass over him, before grabbing the offending limb. Unlike 5 months ago, Makoto saw this as an opportunity, using Naruto's grip to pull her in closer and launching a knee at the blonde's head. Naruto blocked with his left arm. Makoto smiled and sent chakra to her eyes, turning them blood red with 2 tomes spinning slowly in each. She twisted, forcing him to release her. Before kicking at his sternum, she saw Naruto move in slow motion, hand coming up to guard. Makoto altered her angle of attack and her kick changed at the last second to one at the clone's ribs. Naruto smiled and almost seemed to flow around the attack, spinning and planting a nasty heel kick into the black-haired girl's abdomen. Spit flew out of her mouth and Naruto nodded to himself. He had 1 month and Makoto was more than fast enough now. The clone called an end to their sparring session. "Okay, that's enough, Makoto-chan," the Naruto clone called out and the Uchiha gratefully collapsed to the ground. "Now then, I am aware that you three are going to need to have some kind of trump card in the exams, and that is what we are going to train for the rest of the month. It should also help you in showing the Uchiha clan that a lightning user is just as good as a fire user," Naruto declared to the girl. Makoto looked up, surprise in her eyes. "Really, sensei? Is it that Rasengan thing you used against Tusama?" Makoto questioned. Naruto shook his head in a negative. "No, you won't be learning the Rasengan just yet, but this attack is just as good," Naruto assured the 12 going on 13-year-old. "To look at the pros and the cons of the two attacks, then they come out around even. But you should be able to make use of this attack easier than the Rasengan as it is lightning element by nature." The Naruto clone continued his lecture, before fixing Makoto with a stern glare. "Makoto, this attack is listed as a personal jutsu of mine, so under no circumstances are you to tell anyone about it, nor are you to teach it to the other Uchiha, or anyone else for that matter. This move is going to be reserved for you and me alone." The black-haired girl nodded enthusiastically, before looking at Naruto in suspicion. "If you know the three of us need a trump card, then why are you teaching this attack to only me?" Makoto asked. Naruto sighed and wiped a hand over his face. She was sharp, he would give her that. More importantly, she cared about her teammates. That was good, that was very good. The blonde took a deep breath. "Those two will be given their own trump cards. Kushina will have the Rasengan." Naruto held up a hand to stifle Makoto's complaints before they started. "Listen to me, Makoto, in the Chunin exams you may well have to show that you have a lightning-type chakra nature. If that happens, then if what you have told me is correct, then the clan will use that against you. The attack I will teach you, the Chidori, is an A-rank Raiden jutsu for assassination, however it has only one real downside. The attack cannot be used reliably without a Sharingan in order to avoid any kind of counter-attack. For the Uchiha clan to see a Raiden technique like that coming from you, I think that they will allow you to stay inside the clan. At the very least, such a powerful technique coupled with the Uchiha Dojutsu should shut them up." Naruto sighed, looking down at Makoto. "Now then, ready to learn?" The Uchiha nodded eagerly and Naruto smiled. "One last thing. Do well and I've got a present for you." Nawaki looked at his sensei, a pair of hook swords in his hands. They were an unusual weapon, and that was exactly why Naruto had chosen them for Nawaki. The Senju heir rushed forward, sword leading. Naruto unsealed his own sword, an O-katana gifted to him by Mifune of Tetsu no Kuni when he finished his training. The two clashed, and Nawaki was in awe. Every dodge Naruto made was by the absolute smallest of margins. Every time he left himself open, he quickly found himself paying for the opening. Already nicks covered his arms and legs, several bruises forming on his arms from slaps with the flat of Naruto's katana. A nasty bruise on his torso, where he was smacked by the blunt side of the blade after overreaching. The two danced around each other, a flow of constant movement, though Nawaki was almost constantly on the defensive. The two moved back and forth, though Naruto knew that Nawaki couldn't keep this up much longer. In order to increase the boy's already fairly large chakra reserves, Naruto had placed chakra-draining seals on the two hook swords. The constantly sapped the boy's strength, making it harder and harder for him to keep up with the Uzushiogakure genin. But the seals were helping. Every day the Senju grew more and more, his chakra reserves and control improving slowly but surely. Naruto had not had another confrontation with Tsunade since the one in the Hokage's office, though he did wonder why that was. The blonde would be the first to admit his training methods were insane, so that did beg the question of why Tsunade hadn't tried to kill him yet. Though Naruto didn't know it, the answer to that particular question was Nawaki. The last male Senju was quite well aware of what his sister would do if she found out what Naruto's training methods were. But the Senju could tell simply from how much he had improved that there was indeed method to the blonde's madness, so he ran interference for Naruto. Keeping the blonde safely out of the way from his overprotective older sister's punches, his sensei was strong, no doubt about that, but he was not sure if even Naruto could survive an angry Tsunade. But he was willing to bet that it would be one hell of a fight. Now that he considered it, maybe Nawaki should let that fight happen and place a bet on the winner, who knew maybe he could even make some money off it. Nawaki fell to his knees. Naruto looked over the Senju air and pulled out a storage scroll. Putting some chakra into the seal matrix and removing its contents. A large rectangular black case, the blonde smiled at the Senju. Well then Nawaki, I think you will appreciate this. It might not be any kind of special occasion but here. The blonde threw the case at the Senju's feet, and Nawaki opened it cautiously. His mouth dropped open and he looked up at his sensei with nothing but gratitude in his eyes. Laying in the case were possibly the two most beautiful and deadly-looking swords Nawaki had ever laid eyes on. Mirror images of each other, the only exception was that one's hilt was wrapped by red leather and the other by blue. Crescent blades extending over the knuckles. The blade itself was straight for the most part, but around 15 centimeters from the tip there was a curved metal spike. Though Nawaki couldn't see them, seals covered the blade, intricate and interlocking. Naruto smiled at his student. These are called blue crimson. Anyone who knows where that is originally from, give yourself a pat on the back cause you're awesome. I do want to state that I have just taken the name. They have no abilities like the originals. I've put a few seals throughout the blades, but they aren't much more than seals to keep the blades permanently sharp and free of rust. These beauties' real power is in their ability to absorb and store your chakra. They do have a limit, but you won't reach that for a while. Nawaki picked up the two swords reverently, like they were some kind of holy artifacts. Naruto waved his hand at the Senju in the world-famous, "Bring it" manner. Nawaki smiled and charged swords in hand, and the dance of steel started anew. Kushina cursed her sensei, and not for the first time that day. The blonde had decided that her chakra control wasn't good enough and had her work on it. That had been 5 hours ago. Not that Kushina would have minded that much. If her sensei said it needed work, then it needed work. She trusted Naruto more than enough to believe that. But this was insane. Dodge! Naruto yelled, firing another jutsu at Kushina, who flipped out of the way by vaulting off the water's surface. That was the way Naruto was training her chakra control. She would be standing on the surface of water, while performing taijutsu katas, holding a ball of water over the back of her fists using nothing but chakra control, while dodging jutsu. The man was certifiably insane, that was. Kushina was sure of it. No matter how effective the method was, this was still way too much for training purposes. Or as Naruto put it, this is chakra control training when you take it beyond the impossible. Then proceeded to fire off highly destructive attacks at her. Damn that man. Naruto leapt out on the water and threw a punch at the Uzumaki's face. Kushina jumped and kicked at the offending fist, sending it off at a different angle. The redhead landed on her hands and used the force to spring her body off the water's surface and deep into Naruto's guard, throwing a vicious hook at the blonde's kidney. Naruto's hand swept in low and redirected the fist harmlessly around him. Kushina rolled with the push, circling fast and kicking low to the back of the blonde's kneecap. Naruto jumped and twisted in midair, raining down shuriken at Kushina, who jumped back and retuned fire with her own. Naruto touched down and jumped back, his hands blurring through seals. Dodge! Kaden! Gokakyu no Jutsu! Naruto yelled, firing off yet another jutsu at the redhead. Kushina ran through hand seals of her own and smiled as she saw the fireball coming closer. Suijinheki! Water sprayed, dousing the fireball, and Kushina immediately threw herself into a backwards roll. Avoiding the shurikens that cut through the steam, performing hand seals even as she rolled back on the water's surface. The redhead took a deep breath and concentrated on the part of the steam that seemed deepest. Futon. Daitopa. The wind technique left the Uzumaki's mouth and cleared the area. Naruto stood back on the shoreline, hands just finishing his seals. The blonde leapt forward, landing on the water and placing one hand on its surface. Chidori Nagashi. Naruto kept the voltage low enough that it wouldn't do any real damage, but it wouldn't have mattered either way. Kushina was already moving the moment she saw him land on the water. The redhead made a mad dash for the shoreline the moment she saw Naruto crouch down, when he placed his hands on its surface. Kushina leapt into the air, half a second before the water became electrified by Naruto's jutsu. But it wasn't going to be enough. She could see herself coming back down onto the water. Her jump hadn't been enough to make it to the shore. Kushina pulled one arm back. Kami, she hoped this worked. The hand was thrust forward and a chain exploded from her palm, wrapping around a tree, before she retracted the chakra construct, pulling her to the shore and avoiding the dangerous electrified water. Kushina twisted in midair and stuck herself to the side of the tree. Naruto just looked at her with a smile on his face. Kushina had done well, Naruto noted. Even throughout their impromptu sparring session, not even once had the spheres of water on the back of her hands lost their shape or faltered. Now the blonde would be the first to admit that he never really had the chakra control for the Rasengan. So he had to come up with his own ways of forming the attack, but honestly his way of using the Kage Bunshin was a joke. Oh sure, it was inventive, but the Rasengan was a short-range jutsu. Also, unlike the Chidori, it was not one that relied on sheer speed to make up for the fact the opponent knew you had to get in close. Of course, actually using that speed required a Sharingan to combat the tunnel vision, but that was beside the point. The massive amount of speed used by a Chidori user made it far more difficult for the opponent to block or dodge, despite the fact the user had to get in close. The Rasengan, however, did not make use of a speed-style attack, and that meant that to truly use the attack to its fullest potential one had to be able to form the Rasengan almost instantly, so that the opponent would not be able to dodge the technique as the user was already in too close to be dodged. That was why Naruto had forced Kushina to learn chakra control so much and pushed her more than the other two when it came to the subject. Jiraiya's way of training him simply threw chakra control out the window. After all, who needs control when you had all the chakra in the world? That approach did have its upsides, Naruto would not deny that, but it was also this approach that stopped him from using the Rasengan to its full potential for so long. There was also the fact that unlike Naruto, who while he disliked having to use Akane's chakra at first, he was willing to use it. From what Akane had told him about his mother, Kushina hated her with a passion and would never, or at least very rarely, use her chakra by choice. That made chakra control even more important for the redhead, since she would not have a bottomless well of chakra to draw on, unlike Naruto himself. Naruto clapped for his student. Good work, Kushi-chan, that's all the chakra control you had to do for now. The blonde stated, smiling at the redhead, which caused her to gain a faint dusting of a crimson blush on her cheeks from being called Kushi-chan by the blonde. Kushina let the water spheres drop, the resulting splash soaking the ground near the bottom of her tree. The redhead jumped down and walked in front of Naruto. So how'd I do, sensei? Kushina asked. Naruto smiled in return. You did great, Kushina. In fact, you did so well that I think I can start teaching you something really awesome. Naruto said, smiling at the redhead. Kushina in turn looked up at him with a little confusion. What kind of awesome thing, sensei? Naruto smiled and touched the tree next to the redhead. Watch close, okay? Naruto took a deep breath and pulled his right hand back, before thrusting it forward, palm facing the tree. The spinning blue orb of chakra formed half a second before Naruto's palm impacted the tree, ripping through the bark and wood like a hot knife through butter. Leaving a hole in the tree, Naruto turned back to Kushina, who was looking at the blonde with a slight bit of awe. Well then, Kushi-chan, think you're ready to learn the Rasengan? Naruto asked, smirking. Kushina's eyes were so wide that they looked like they were about to fall out of her head. Before she pumped her fist into the air, grinning like she had just won the lottery or been elected as the first female Hokage. Hell yeah, Kushina declared, smiling up at her sensei, who gave her one of his signature fox-like grins and a quick thumbs up in return. Kushina would admit that the blonde had become a little like family to the team of 3 genin. He was always willing to take time out of his day to help them improve or even just to talk. Hell, Kushina could remember when she found out that Naruto lived on the floor above her. She had gotten bored the next day and decided to go upstairs to see if the blonde wanted to do something. When Kushina went inside Naruto's apartment, Nawaki was already there. Naruto and Nawaki had been playing cards and talking. The Senju heir had told Kushina that it was because both of them were just bored. Tsunade was out that particular day and Nawaki needed help with a technique, so the Senju had taken a walk. Naruto had saw him and helped out, and one thing led to another until they were playing poker while discussing the finer points of jutsu usage in a combat situation. Since then, every now and then Kushina, Makoto and Nakai would drop over to their blonde sensei's place. Naruto was always happy to have them. Hell, it wasn't uncommon for the 3 genin to spend an entire Sunday inside the blonde's apartment. Sunday was, as Naruto had dictated to them, their relaxation and team bonding day. If they wanted to spend that day inside the apartment talking or watching a movie or something, the blonde never seemed to mind. There were even signs that Naruto's apartment was being taken over by 3 genin. It wasn't anything major. Just a few scrolls of kunai and shuriken here and there, a movie or two from the genin lying around the blonde's home, a jacket or some other piece of clothing that was not Naruto's hanging off the back of a chair. The blonde never really seemed to mind. If anything, he seemed to enjoy the genin's visits. Kushina's head got taken forcefully out of the clouds when a water balloon impacted with the side of her head, not bursting but definitely attracting Kushina's attention. Naruto smiled, throwing another balloon up and down in his left hand. Now that I have your attention. The next month passed in a haze of exhaustion and pain for the 3 genin. Naruto pushed them to master their new techniques relentlessly. They no longer had off days to train with family or just kick back on. No. Even the 3 genin's off time was swallowed by Naruto's relentless training. He pushed Makoto harder to be faster and faster. Her speed would be the deciding factor in any fight that the Chidori was used in. Naruto did not focus on other jutsu, only on having Makoto perform and execute the Chidori. Once the Uchiha genin could do that, Naruto pushed her to form it faster and using less hand seals, in addition to bringing Makoto's speed up. Naruto was impressed when Makoto rose to the challenge and then exceeded his expectations. Now the young Uchiha was no Rock Lee when it came to speed, but when Naruto considered it, who really was? But she was fast, very, very fast. If Naruto was to give a rough estimate on Makoto's speed, the blonde would call her a mid-chunin, but for brief bursts she could push herself to high chunin. That sprint was what Naruto wanted Makoto to use when executing the Chidori. The blonde had toyed with the idea of teaching Makoto other forms of the Chidori but decided against it. The Chidori consisted of a series of 12 hand signs. Naruto could cut that down to 3. As far as Naruto knew, it was impossible to go any lower. At least he had never seen Kakashi or that bastard Sasuke go any lower than that. Though the blonde did admit that it was theoretically possible, but even if she wasn't able to cut it down to 3 hand seals, Makoto was more than passable. The young Uchiha had cut the hand seals down to 9. That was better than Sasuke was at her age. More importantly, Makoto could use the Chidori 3 times in a day, one more than Sasuke could at her age. Naruto felt like doing a happy dance when he found that out. When he met Sasuke in the fiery depths of hell, he would be able to say that he, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, had trained Sasuke's own mother to be better than him. That was going to be a special kind of revenge. All in all, Naruto was more than happy with Makoto's progress. She was more or less the genin's team leader as well. Her level-headed thinking making up for her teammates' impulsiveness. For Nawaki, Naruto had punished the young Senju mercilessly. The Senju, like Kushina, had shown a decent ability to work with a blade, but it was overshadowed by his ability with nin and taijutsu. Nawaki did express an interest in combining his ninjutsu with kenjutsu, in order to create a new, more versatile form he could fight with. So Naruto taught Nawaki how to use hook swords. They were not what one would call common, and so not many people knew how to use them. Fewer knew how to fight against them. Something Naruto could say he knew personally due to his little encounter with Kurosaki Raiga. The Kiba were a form of hook sword after all. Naruto had crammed everything he could into the young Senju, focusing on his kenjutsu and the creation of chakra strings mainly. Nawaki would need the chakra strings for the trump card that Naruto wanted to impart to him. Unlike the Chidori or the Rasengan, this attack truly was his own technique. It was also probably the only jutsu in the world that could be listed as an E or an S-ranked jutsu. The effectiveness it had really depended on the user, but Naruto was still very impressed with Nawaki's progress with Naruto's personal Kaden technique, Kaden, Bakuenjin. Add to that some extra lessons on both ninjutsu and taijutsu, and the Senju was a force to be reckoned with. More importantly, it should be more than enough to completely decimate any of the opponents that Nawaki could face in the Chunin exams. Though what Naruto really wanted to see was Nawaki vs anyone from Tsunade's genin team. Naruto was sure that the Senju heir would decimate them in short order. He just hoped he had a camera and Tsunade was around when it happened. Seeing Nawaki show he was far more powerful than he let on, and seeing Tsunade's reaction to it would be like Christmas coming early to the blonde. Finally there was Kushina. Naruto had, quite literally, pounded everything he knew into the girl. From combat tactics to kenjutsu and finally the Rasengan, it had taken 3.5 weeks for Kushina to be able to form the Rasengan correctly, e.g. the attack not blowing up in her face. But the girl did manage it. The last few days were spent on Naruto giving Kushina advice on how to create the Rasengan faster. The redhead was currently still at 6 seconds. Better than Naruto was at her age with the use of his clones, and the blonde told her as much, but still not fast enough. That being said, Kushina had one advantage Naruto didn't: chakra chains, by making use of the chain's ability to hold down her opponent. Kushina could keep them from moving enough that it made the time it took her to form the Rasengan mean less. Naruto was also pleased to note that Kushina could fight with the best genins Kiri could offer when it came to kenjutsu. The redhead was a little on the short side to fight with Naruto's favored weapon, an okatana, so the Narukami had to improvise. Kushina now fought using 3 weapons: 2 wakizashis for indoor fighting or up close and personal work and a single katana. Thankfully the normal katana's length was short enough that Kushina could use it without a problem, though until she grew a bit more the wakizashis would be her better weapons. Kushina's ninjutsu was nothing special, but he knew that would probably never change. Besides, Kushina was only really bad with jutsu that took a lot of hand seals. So as long as Naruto kept it to shape and nature manipulations, the redhead would never have any real problems. Which was a good thing considering that shape and nature manipulation were something he was very good at. Add to that, most of the skills that Naruto taught to Kushina regarding the wakizashi and the katana were directly from the samurai of Tetsu no Kuni. And the samurai didn't use hand seals, only shape and nature manipulation. You had a sword style that was almost tailor-made for Uzumaki Kushina. Much like Mifune had once told Naruto that the samurai's sword style seemed to fit him like few others. The blonde made a mental note to visit Tetsu to speak with Mifune. It would be good if he could convince the old samurai to teach his genin a few things. Naruto was not sure if Mifune would agree or not, but the old man was always good like that. It would probably end up being some kind of trade-off really. Most likely Mifune would agree to teach his genin in exchange for Naruto performing a few services for Tetsu no Kuni, and honestly Naruto would be happy to help. Tetsu was a fine country, one that never needlessly antagonized others, and the samurai had a strict sense of honor and loyalty. There was something Naruto could respect about that. Moreover, he owed Mifune more than he could repay. Even if the old man in this dimension didn't know that, Naruto would still do his best to pay back that debt that he felt he still owed even now, despite Mifune telling him that there was no debt to repay. Naruto sighed. How did this happen again? The blonde looked down again, at Kushina and Mikoto sleeping on his chest. Now the blonde knew for a fact that the 3 of them still had all their clothes on. Well, that was one theory out the window. And a theory Naruto was quite glad to be rid of. They were 13 for Kami's sake. If Naruto had done that with Mikoto or Kushina, he would have felt like a cradle robber. The blonde looked to his right. Nawaki was passed out and sleeping on the couch. The blonde sighed and looked up at his ceiling. That was correct, all 4 members of Team 5 were inside Naruto's apartment. Yesterday marked the last day of training for the 3 genin, not that Naruto had a choice but to stop as the Chunin exams started the day after. It was their old rest day anyway, so Naruto gave them the Sunday off. The 3 genin decided to use it as a team bonding day. As Naruto had forbade them from practicing any form of the ninja arts for the day. The day had been interesting for the blonde as he simply let the genin pull him around, though Naruto did feel saddened by the fact that Ichiraku Ramen hadn't opened yet. Naruto put that on his list of things to do: invest in Ichiraku Ramen when it opened. At least Naruto hoped it would open. The blonde had no idea what he would do if the delectable ramen of Ichiraku was taken away from him forever. Naruto made another mental note to get to Tetsu no Kuni as fast as possible. The only ramen stand that rivaled Tuchi's godlike ramen was there. The 3 genin had pulled him off to lunch first, the 3 fighting over where they would eat. Naruto bopped all 3 of them on the head and took them to the Golden Leaf, arguably the best restaurant in Konoha. Before telling the 3 genin to go nuts, Naruto would foot the bill for them today. They deserved that much for surviving his brutal training. Well, that, and Naruto got a feeling that the only reason Tsunade hadn't tried to kill him yet was Nawaki misdirecting her. God bless the Senju's soul for that. Besides, Naruto was starting to see each member of Team 5 as his family. Naruto had no problem in treating family to lunch, even if it was outrageously expensive lunch. Following that, both Nawaki and he were dragged around for a Makoto-induced shopping spree. Fortunately for the two males, Makoto was a kunoichi. So they were mostly spared a clothing-induced hell and instead ended up spending time browsing ninja stores. For things like shuriken, kunai, and other wonderful things capable of stabbing or exploding. Though Naruto did tell his entire genin team not to purchase any explosive notes, Naruto was no seal master but was far, far above average. The blonde could easily make explosive notes for them. In fact, he actually ended up giving them around 100 each, his own special brand of explosive notes. Same size, 10 times the bang. What could Naruto say? When it came to explosions, any Uzumaki worth their salt knew one thing: size matters. Kushina declared that she wanted to relax after their little impromptu shopping trip, so they dumped everything inside Naruto's apartment. Before heading to the hot springs, but not before Naruto set a barrier over the women's side. Even if he would never admit it, Naruto thought of Jiraiya as a father. So he put the barrier up for the old pervert's benefit. If anyone tried peeking, it would look like the woman's side was filled with fat old ladies. This was better for Jiraiya than the alternative. After all, Naruto would hate to have to beat his father figure to death for peeking on his students. Still, he could only do that if he got to the man before Kushina and Makoto. Actually, now Naruto thought about it, maybe he should let Jiraiya get himself caught. It would be interesting to find out what a Rasengan did to the male reproductive system, and he was sure that if Jiraiya was caught peeking on her, Kushina would show him exactly what would happen when the Rasengan was applied directly to Jiraiya's balls. The end of the day was spent with the four of them watching movies in Naruto's apartment, and eating takeout ramen. They must have fallen asleep while doing that. Naruto looked down again and smiled at the content looks on Kushina and Makoto's faces. Naruto yawned and looked at the clock. 10 am. They didn't need to be at the academy until 3, but there was no guarantee that Naruto or any of his students would wake up on time if the blonde went back to sleep. Naruto sighed. This was going to be a long morning. He shook Kushina awake. The redhead looked at him groggily. Huh? Naruto-sensei? What are you doing in my room? Naruto chuckled nervously. Kushina, this is my apartment and you're kind of sleeping on me. Would you mind getting off, please? Naruto asked. Kushina looked down at where she was before looking back at Naruto, then looking down again and going a red so bright it put her hair to shame. The remainder of the occupants of the apartment, and the apartment block, were woken by an embarrassed scream from Kushina, followed by one from Makoto with the sound of Nawaki's hysterical laughter in the background. Naruto sighed while cooking breakfast for 4. Kushina was currently using his shower while Nawaki waited for his turn and Makoto was helping him by making pancake batter. How had this happened? When he woke his team up, Naruto had expected them all to go home, then he would meet them again for the Chunin exams in a few hours. That, needless to say, had not happened, the three all opting to stay at his apartment and get ready there. Naruto's argument that they needed to go get clothes and more importantly more equipment such as ration bars, kunai, etc. was shut down when Kushina revealed that the three had been stashing things like that in Naruto's apartment for months now. In a bunch of storage scrolls in his spare room, in a wardrobe he didn't know he even had, containing clothing Naruto knew was not his. How the hell did he miss them bringing a wardrobe into his apartment? And putting storage scrolls and clothing in it as well? He was an S-rank ninja, Kami, damn it. He should pick up on things like this. He must have been slipping. A thought like that did not sit well with Naruto. The three genin rushed out of the apartment after breakfast, not bothering to help Naruto wash up and sprinting over to the academy. Naruto checked the time, it was 1 p.m., and the blonde started doing the math in his head. If they walked, and they probably would, then it would take between 30 and 40 minutes to get to the academy. Naruto sighed and looked at the dishes, then made the infamous cross-shaped hand sign, Kage Bunshin, Narukami, Naruto's answer to all forms of menial labor. The original sat down on his couch, formerly Nawaki's bed, and looked both ways before unsealing an orange book and reading, a perverted giggle escaping his lips every now and then. Naruto checked the clock, it was almost 2, and the blonde stood and placed his hands together. Naruto threw a quick look over his shoulder at the still cleaning clones. Lock the door before you pop. He got a chorus of "hi" from the two clones before leaving for the academy in a shunshin, a flash of lighting accompanying Naruto's exit. The blonde found himself standing in the hall before the exam room. Naruto spread out his awareness, looking for his genin's chakra. The blonde sighed. It seemed they were coming to him. Naruto looked up as Kushina came into view and gave a lazy wave. "Huh, what are you doing here, sensei?" Nawaki asked as he came into view. Naruto smiled at them. The three of them were ready, they were going to ace this. Also no invasion for them, so at least they would be allowed to become chunin. "Just some last-minute advice, Nawaki-kun," Naruto said, smiling at the three, before nodding to himself and focusing on Makoto. "Makoto-chan, you are, in a way, this team's leader. You're level-headed and can analyze a situation quickly and efficiently. It helps you're not too impulsive as well. Keep a level head, stay focused and keep these two from going off the deep end and you should all be fine. When it comes to battle, Makoto-chan, I have only one thing to say, let none match your speed." Naruto smiled at the raven-haired girl who beamed up at him. Naruto turned his attention to Nawaki. "Nawaki-kun, you're the team's all-rounder. You can handle just about any situation you come across because you're good at everything. That being said, right now I want you to leave using the swords as a last resort. Have something to surprise the opponent with in round 3, okay? Other than that, your chakra is far above what a genin's should be. If worse comes to worst, you should be able to outlast the opponent." Nawaki nodded at Naruto and placed his hand on the scroll that contained his swords. "Kushina, you're the team's powerhouse. Your chakra is the highest out of all three of you, and with the amount of power you have at your disposal, you shouldn't have a problem bulldozing through the opposition if you need to. Just remember that finesse has its place and to make use of it. Other than that, don't use your wakizashis or your katana unless you don't have another choice. Keep something as a trump card, besides the other thing." Kushina nodded and Naruto took one last look at his team. Final words of advice: stick by each other and work as a team. Remember always, those that break the rules are trash. But those that abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Naruto turned and opened the door to the exam room. Kick their asses hard. Naruto finished smiling. The three genin gave grins so bloodthirsty that it would give Kisame a run for his money. "Hi, Naruto-sensei." Naruto's smiling expression fell off his face the moment his genin were through the exam doors. The Uzushiogakure Jonin channeled some of his chakra into the seal of his wrist, katana dropping into his waiting hand. Naruto took a deep breath. He had felt them when he spread his awareness out, chakra signatures that should not be here. Thanks to Akane's ability to sense hatred, Naruto was able to tell a lot of things about a person just by feeling their chakra. The chakra he had felt from these people was cold, almost robot-like, emotionless. They were feelings he had got in his own dimension from only one sect of shinobi, Root. The blonde then disappeared in a burst of speed. It was time to find out what that damn warhawk wanted from the Chunin exams. They had already tried to abduct Kushina once before and Naruto was not letting that happen again. Naruto dropped soundlessly behind the Root ninja, his vantage point directly overlooking the examinee's room. Naruto saw the name mark in the ANBU's mask and the katana stabbed forward, severing the man's spine, while in 5 other locations his cage bunchins did the same, while almost all of them, except one who merely knocked the ninja out. Naruto wanted to present the man to the Sandame. It would get the old man on Danzo's case and hopefully make the old fool think twice about his movements. The last thing Naruto needed was Danzo screwing up his genin's chances. The blonde leaned down and sealed the body in a storage scroll before jumping off. He needed to get to the Jonin sensei's room before anyone started to get suspicious. Naruto made another cage bunchin as he jumped, handing the clone the scroll with orders to get it to the old monkey. A shunshin later, Naruto was standing outside the Jonin sensei's waiting room. The blonde yawned as he walked inside. It was plain, a lot of seats and a projector screen of the goings-on in the examination room. Naruto yawned again before looking over the Jonin inside the room. There were a little over 100 of them, and he spotted Jiraiya and Tsunade easily enough, as well as an Uchiha that he didn't know. That being said, the man did look like he had a stick shoved so far up his ass Naruto would have needed a miner's license to remove the damn thing. The blonde's eyes kept moving: 4 from Suna, 6 from Aim, 4 from Kiri, 8 from Kumo, 3 from Iwa. That old bastard Onoki had balls of solid fucking titanium to send his genin to Konoha after the stunt he tried to pull. Naruto could see 2 from Taki, a few more villages that Naruto didn't recognize. Naruto couldn't see any from Uzu, but that was to be expected. Even if Naruto had driven Iwa off, the fact remained that they had attacked Uzu. The Azukage probably didn't want to risk even a single Jonin being outside Uzu right now. Though when Kushina made it to the finals, Naruto was sure that Dad would make the trip to see her. In fact, he actually knew Dad would be making the trip even if Kushina didn't make it, but still he hadn't told the girl that. Let it be a surprise for her. Naruto gave Jiraiya a lazy wave as he sat down, getting a nod from the white-haired man, who in return walked over to the blonde. You got some balls, kid, putting your team in the exam with only 6 months training. Jiraiya said with a smile before turning serious. You think they're ready? Jiraiya asked. The man sounded genuinely concerned. If that was because Tsunade was worried about Nakai or because Minato already had a crush on Kushina, Naruto wasn't sure. Moreover, he wasn't sure he cared. You've only had 6 months to train your team as well, Jiraiya-san. Why didn't you give them more time? Naruto asked. Jiraiya shrugged before sitting down next to the blonde. True, the white-haired man admitted. That being said, Minato and Hiyashi are geniuses in their own right, and Sume isn't that far behind them in terms of skill. Hell, they even managed to complete a C rank with no support from me. Hey, now that was a good mission. All I had to do was sit back and let the genin do all the heavy lifting. Jiraiya finished. Naruto smirked inside his head. So Jiraiya wanted to compare mission records, did he? Too bad for the white-haired man. Naruto knew for a fact that his team had completed the most C ranks. How many missions has your team done so far, Jiraiya-san? Naruto asked. The white-haired man puffed up his chest proudly. 32 D ranks and 4 C ranks, Jiraiya declared proudly. Tsunade edged her way closer. Naruto smiled. Well, my team has the advantage then, Jiraiya-san. So far we have completed 13 C-rank missions, no D ranks. Jiraiya's jaw acquainted itself firmly with the floor. The hell? You know you can't even take a C rank without completing 20 D ranks first, right? The white-haired man asked. Naruto just shrugged back to him. Actually you can, it's just recommended that you don't. The blonde corrected his older companion, who just looked like someone had stabbed him. Don't you think that's just a little irresponsible? Jiraiya asked. Naruto had to stifle his laughter. Yes, the great toad sage Jiraiya. The man who threw him down a cliff with nothing but the hope he might be able to summon up some of Akane's chakra was talking to him about responsibility. The godfather part notwithstanding, the blonde was still a little pissed from when he found that out after all. Not really, I knew their limits and their strengths and weaknesses, they were ready for it. Naruto replied. Jiraiya, however, looked unconvinced. Still, I think you. Naruto chose to cut him off there. Jiraiya-san, do you train Team 5? Naruto asked. Jiraiya looked at him like he was insane. No, of course not, I am the sensei of Team 7. The white-haired man replied, looking a little lost at Naruto's line of questioning. Okay then, have you even seen Team 5 training or watched them spar with each other? Jiraiya shook his head. Naruto sighed. Then why are you questioning my methods? I know what they are capable of because I did train them. I have taught them a lot, from the ground up in some cases. Jiraiya, I do understand that you are doing this out of concern for the genin. I thank you for that, I really do, but I know they can do this, so please, until you can come up with a decent reason for me to keep them out of the exams, then please keep quiet. The white-haired man nodded and sighed. I just hope you know what you're doing. Jiraiya said to the blonde. Naruto nodded and turned his attention to the screen. He wondered what they were going to do for the first test. Kushina stopped as they entered the examination room. The redhead counted at least 50 different teams. But from what she had been able to gather about the exam in the final round, it was a one-on-one tournament-style matchup. One that was held over only one day, so that meant that there could only be around a maximum of 20 matches that day. Since the tournament had to end the same day it started, there could be no more than 12 participants of the final round. That meant that the first 2 tests would cut down the numbers heavily. Kushina looked around. Battlefield tactics had been beaten into her by her sensei, and right now they were telling her to identify who had the best chance of making it to the final rounds. Kushina chose to focus on the Konoha teams. She did know the most about them after all. First up, Team 7, she looked closely. Namikaze Minato, Hyuga Hiyashi and Inuzuka Sume. They would be in the final round. The redhead was no fool. Minato was a genius, she wouldn't deny that. Couple that with the visual abilities of the Byakugan allowing them to know where the team's enemies were coming from and Tsun's Inuzuka traits, the team would be almost impossible to take by surprise. In fact, most times their enemy tried to ambush them would likely be turned back on the attackers, with Minato's brain for combat and skill at the futon techniques of the Namikaze clan. Hiashi's skill with the Jukin and Tsun's skill with the Inuzuka taijutsu style, the ambushers would quickly find themselves torn apart. The redhead made sure to remember that in case she faced them in the exams, just because they may look like an easy target most likely meant they were setting a trap. Next up, Team 4, Uchiha Tayaki, Junichi Amy and Kan. They weren't really much. A medical corps team, she had Nawaki do some research on them. None could use Tsunade's strength but all had fine control over chakra scalpels. Add to that Makoto had told her that Tayaki had activated his Sharingan, one tome in his right eye, two in his left. The only other information Makoto had been able to dig up about him was that he had above-average control of the Uchiha clan's favored Kaden, Gokakyu no Jutsu. The Uchiha was apparently able to use it as both an orb of flames and concentrated stream like a flamethrower. Junichi Amy was a member of the Genjutsu using Kurama clan. Though she was a branch member from a small side family, apparently like the Sharingan she could place a person under a Genjutsu just by looking them in the eyes. Finally Kan, according to Academy records, above average taijutsu, above average ninjutsu and below average ninjutsu due to small chakra reserves. His smaller reserves afforded him greater control, and with above average taijutsu and chakra scalpels, Kushina would have to be on guard. The best way of fighting against the medical team would be from long range, failing that would be weapons. With chakra scalpels it would be beyond foolish to engage them in straight taijutsu. Third and final team of Konoha that could make it to the finals was Team 13, Uchiha Fugaku, Aburame Shibi and finally Akamichi Shomei. Kushina did wonder briefly where Shikaku, Choza and Inoichi were but quickly discarded the thought. Their sensei probably wanted them to gain more experience first before sending them into the exams. At any rate, she knew Fugaku's abilities back to front thanks to Makoto. Shibi was an Aburame, so he was most likely one of the best trackers in the room, and finally Shomei. Well, the man was an Akamichi, so it was a given he could use his clan's multi-size techniques, probably very good at taijutsu. They would need to watch themselves should they need to take the fight up close and personal. Kushina sighed and wondered if they did preliminary rounds, because if she was right in thinking that her own team along with these three got to the finals, then they may well need them. Especially with some of the other genin she could see. Still, this was going to be fun. After all the training they were put through was hell. Compared to what's already happened, this should be a walk in the park. She shook that thought out of her head. Naruto had beaten the fact that overconfidence got you killed into her. Makoto leaned in. Anyone we should look out for? Kushina shook her head. Nope, only the ones we talked about earlier, the others are no real threat. But as for the other villages, I don't even know where to start. The Konoha teams are a definite, though we need to keep an eye out for them. Makoto nodded, before looking at Kushina again. Do you think they are going to come after us? The raven-haired beauty asked, her head inclining slightly toward Team 7. Kushina bit her lip. It had been a long time after all, hopeful it was over with by now. At least she hoped it was over. Clans could hold a grudge like no others though. I don't know, but if Minato did want to embarrass me, then he would wait for the third round. Makoto nodded and turned to Nawaki to relate Kushina's predictions. The reason why Namikaze Minato may have wanted to embarrass Kushina was quite simple. She had, in a way, insulted the Namikaze clan and its heir, e.g. him. In a little bit of a power play politically, the Namikaze had sent a marriage proposal to her father, the current Uzumaki clan head, trying to betroth Minato and her in a marriage, a political byplay of course. It was the Namikaze's bid to try and gain more power in Konoha and a foothold in Uzu. Dad had asked her opinion on the matter and Kushina had flat out refused. Of course Kushina had nothing against Minato as a person, but she was not about to say she was willing to spend the rest of her life with him without getting to know him first. So the marriage proposal was turned down, as the Namikaze were unwilling to wait. Kushina wasn't even aware if Minato had known about it, as it was not uncommon for clans to marry their children off without consulting them first. But as the redhead had never really talked to the blonde, even after turning the proposal down, she was unsure if he felt slighted or not. If Minato did feel slighted by her, then there was a good chance he would try and get back at her in the exam. Though Kushina did doubt that a little. After all, the boy had never shown signs of trying anything in the past, even if he was a little cold to her, still it was nothing that wasn't expected. At any rate, she had more important things to dwell on. Kushina went back to observing the other genin. Someone was bound to do something stupid and give away an ability or two, and if not, watching two people beat each other senseless in a taijutsu match was always fun. Naruto smiled as he saw Kushina giving the teams a once-over, good girl. Checking some of the competition out and ranking them by threat level most likely. Hell, Naruto was doing it himself. So far he counted 3 teams from Konoha, 2 from Kiri, 1 from Kumo, 2 from Suna, 1 from AIM, and 1 other that was possible from Iwa, that would make it to round 2, or to be more correct, had the best chance of making it past round 2. Naruto did have to stifle a chuckle when he saw a younger B. It seemed he hadn't started rapping yet. Maybe Naruto could stop that before it started. An Anbu dropped down next to him, startling some of the Jonin. The boar-masked Anbu bowed to the seated blonde. Narukami-san, the Sandame would like to see you in his office if you wouldn't mind. Naruto nodded. Sure, I'll be there shortly. Naruto hands came up into the ram hand seal as he used Shunshin, disappearing in a flash of lightning, startling some of the more nervous Jonin and making Jiraiya's hair stand on end to end, from the static electricity discharged. Jiraiya sighed and placed his hand on his head, feeling the spikier than usual hair. I bet he did that on purpose. Jiraiya grumbled. He wasn't wrong. Naruto appeared, already bowing before the Hokage. You called Sarutobi-sama, Naruto stated, eyes trained on the floor, exactly like an Anbu awaiting orders. Hiruzen looked at Naruto for a second before stating in an official tone. This is serious business right now, Naruto-san. I will have to ask you to refer to me as Hokage-sama for the duration of this meeting. Naruto nodded, acknowledging the request. Of course, Hokage-sama. What do you wish of me? Naruto asked, eyes still trained on the floor. Hiruzen took a deep breath in, before exhaling again. Jonin Narukami Naruto of Uzushiogakure no Sato, today at close to 1400 hours. Were you responsible for the deaths of 5 root shinobi and the capture of 1, correct? Naruto nodded. You are correct, Hokage-sama. The Sarutobi nodded. Do you have any idea as to what these members were planning or what they were doing at their locations? No, Hokage-sama. All I knew was that they were operating illegally and need to be disposed of. I will admit the fact they have attacked my team in the past did have a bearing on my decision, but I still do believe my actions to be the correct ones. Hiruzen nodded and sighed. Then Jonin Narukami I, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandame Hokage of Konohagakure, hereby assign you this S-rank mission. Naruto nodded, indicating he was both willing and ready to accept. For the duration of the second exam inside Training Ground 44, you are to shadow Team 5. Should any shinobi, root or otherwise, attempt to abduct any member of Team 5 and leave the village with them there to be disposed of, I will trust you to know what is acceptable and unacceptable inside these parameters. Naruto nodded. Of course, Hokage-sama, I will be ready to start immediately. Naruto made another hand seal and used Shunshin to return to his apartment. He was going to need some supplies in case things went to shit fast. Nawaki was feeling restless. What the hell was taking so damn long? They had been waiting for 20 damn minutes already. The exam was to start at 3 p.m. or 1500 hours. It was now almost 3:20 and Nawaki was starting to get a little anxious. What the genin in the room didn't know was that the Jonin were deliberately not entering and waiting for a fight to break out, so that the tension would be at its peak for the test. Well, that, and they were taking bets on how long it would take for the genin to start a fight with each other. Eventually, as predicted, someone did something stupid. In this case, it was a few ninja from Taki insulting Hanzo in front of the AIM ninja. Bad move. The AIM ninja didn't bother retorting with words and opted to go straight to blades instead. The fight, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 3.5 seconds. The first move went to the AIM genin, drawing a ninjutsu, the second to the Taki nin taking a defensive stance, and the third went to the chunin that knocked both of the unfortunate ninja unconscious. Nakai winced as he heard the two skulls connect with the ground, kami that sounded painful. The chunin stood and looked at the 4 remaining teammates of the two. Take these 2 sacks of crap and get out. If they can't even follow simple instructions like wait, then they sure as hell aren't ready for chunin. Now get out. The 4 remaining team members went to argue and were summarily knocked unconscious by the Chunin's companions. The man nodded to his 2 partners and turned to the assembled genin. Alright, listen up, this year's test is being hosted by the head of the T&I department. For anyone who's wondering, T&I stands for Torture and Interrogation, Morino Hibiki. As such, we will be watching you all closely. Be aware. The test is simple. Each team will be given a fragment of data to memorize. Then a member of each team will be chosen randomly. Members from an opposing team will proceed to interrogate each chosen person. Any and all forms of interrogation are allowed, but they must be alive when they come out, preferably with their limbs attached. The Chunin stretched, reaching towards the heavens. As for why we will be watching you, it is quite simple. In the event that a team manages to extract the information but their team member that is being interrogated also cracks and the same happens to the other side, we will be deciding the tiebreaker based on our recorded observations. As you may have noticed, Hibiki-san is not in the room. He will be observing via special cameras set up throughout the rooms you will be assigned to, so don't worry too much, he will be watching. The man yawned. Oh, I almost forgot, my name's Yamanaka Fuan, and if you have any questions about the exam, please feel free to keep them to yourself because I will not be answering them. All the information you needed was given out in the explanation I gave not 5 minutes ago. Missed it? Well, that's just a fucking bad. Nawaki looked at his 2 teammates who actually looked a little excited about the form their test took. Why Kami, why did he always get the crazy ones? First his sister, then Makoto and Kushina, and most recently his sensei. Surely he deserved a break by now, right? The scrolls were given out. Nawaki unrolled it and almost face-faulted. What the hell kind of secret message was that? Now Nawaki had no proof, but he blamed Naruto for this, and by complete accident managed to lay the blame at the culprit's feet through sheer amount of experience. The message stated quite clearly, the ramen moves at dawn. What the hell did he do to deserve this? Nawaki was a good boy. 3 guesses who I stole that from, and your first 2 guesses don't count. At any rate, he cursed his borderline certifiable sensei for this. Nawaki cursed him most strongly and wished him some form of bodily harm. Kushina was on the other end of the emotional spectrum, completely overjoyed that someone, most likely her sensei with the way she saw him go through it, treated ramen so seriously. Ramen was a serious business after all. Nawaki sighed and memorized the scroll before incinerating it with a quick and seal less low-ranked Kaiden jutsu. Fire was such a great element. All the possibilities for wide-scale destruction. Nawaki pulled himself away from the thoughts of wide-scale fiery devastation. No matter how pleasing said thoughts may be, after all, who didn't love explosions? The Senju turned his attention back to the Chunin who stood at the front of the room. Okay, maggots, your teams will be called on at random to be interrogated by another. At this time your little secret keeper will also be separated from you and taken to be, he gave a sadistic smile, talked to. Nawaki shivered. Okay, now that was creepy. The 3 genin of Team 4 waited, and waited, and waited. They almost just wanted themselves to be called up, being interrogation damned. Just some action would be nice. However, the world is quite often a numbers game, and at the moment there were only 30 interrogation rooms. Each team was given a total of 20 minutes to extract the information. With 143 teams in the room it was going to take, and this was if all the teams used the entire 20 minutes, a grand total of around 2 hours. Okay, so it really wasn't that long, but it didn't matter, they were going crazy from the inactivity. Finally their turn arrived. The Chunin smiled. Sure, it was creepy, but it was no Narukami Naruto manic laugh while yelling about youth or throwing exploding model cows at you, so the genin were relatively unaffected. Though all did collectively shiver at the memory, they just hoped that time would dull the horror, or they saw something that managed to repress the memory, whatever came first. The man did seem a little put out that they were unaffected by his smile, but quickly shrugged it off. Okay girlies, you're the interrogators to these little tacky ninja. The Chunin made a quick gesture off to the side. Senju, you're a punching bag, get inside. Nawaki felt his head snap back from the force of the punch and smiled. He would never say it out loud for fear of encouraging the man, but he would admit, privately, that he was glad for the body conditioning they had been put through. Compared to being hit by his sensei, the punches the tacky ninja were throwing felt like love taps. Nawaki channeled his chakra to his fingers. He was being held by rope, bound hand and foot. He could work with this. Using the utmost care, the Senju crafted a chakra string made completely out of Kaden nature chakra. Before using it to slice through his bonds, but left them looking as if he was still bound, element of surprise and all that. The Taki Nin punched out again, this time Nawaki moved. The Senju pushed his body forward just under the punch and stuck the Taki Nin in the family pride. The boy doubled over in pain and Nawaki's knee met the genin's face. The Senju vaulted off the ninja's back and closed grappling with the other. Nawaki twisted bring the Taki genin to the floor before punching him in the face, breaking the cartilage in his nose before slamming his head into the concrete, knocking him unconscious. The Senju stood and dusted himself off and spat out some blood before knocking lightly on the door. The door swung open revealing a bored-looking Chunin. Done already, Sen, was as far as he got before Nawaki walked out of the room leaving behind the two injured Taki Nin. The Chunin looked after the boy for a second before looking into the room and seeing the downed ninja. Well, that's a first, the Chunin admitted before calling over another team. Naruto landed inside his apartment. It looked like for the first time in a long time he would have to take something seriously. Naruto shrugged out of his casual clothing and walked into his room. It was a fairly Spartan affair, a simple bed and wardrobe with a small desk and chair in the corner. At least that was all Naruto allowed most people to see. Even his genin had no idea just how much of an armory the room really was. The blonde whipped a kuani out and cut his hand and placed it on a seemingly normal part of the wall. Kai, the blonde declared. Black lines in interlocking spirals wormed their way across all four walls of the room, the window being placed under a funinjutsu barrier to prevent anyone seeing in. The black lines layered themselves one atop another, forming a complex and interlocking pattern that made one amazed at their very intricacy. There was a small blast of smoke and the bare four walls had been replaced, each wall now housing rows upon rows of weapons. Hundreds of kunai and shuriken, exploding tags, ninja wire, barrier tags, razor wire, garrote wire, tantos, wakizashis, kodachis, katanas, okatanas, scimitars, arrows, bows, armor of varying sizes and designs, throwing knives, hidden blades, poisons, paralyzing potions, healing elixirs. The room quite literally stocked everything Naruto could ever need when it came to weaponry. The blonde sauntered over to an armor display rack and quickly donned the suit. Mottled gray pants with a shirt, a thick cloak for obscuring his face and physical features, a pair of black combat boots and finally a pair of fingerless Anbu issue gloves on his hands. Next came his weapons. Naruto decided that safe was far better than sorry, and as such the blonde packed like he was preparing for war. Hidden blade on each arm, 24 throwing knives in easy reach. A pair of hook swords strapped to his back, wakizashi on his hip, a chikudo joining it. A few hundred kuani and shuriken stored in seals over his body, along with his okatana and some explosive notes. Naruto sighed and picked up a bottle of black hair dye. Naruto shuddered. Black hair, and he would probably have to make it straight hair too in order to avoid more suspicion. He would look, a little, like an Uchiha. Dear sweet Kami, he hoped those little bastards appreciated this. Mikado yawned and waited for the last few teams to finish their interrogation test. Getting the info out of the Taki Nin they had been assigned hadn't been very hard. Then again, she did have the prank princess from Hell Uzumaki Kushina on her side, along with the inherited sadism that came from being the student of Narukami Naruto. A few threats here, a couple of Raiden-enhanced finger strikes to the genin's family pride, and the Taki Nin folded like wet paper. Memories. Nawaki had walked out of the interrogation room not too long after they had finished. Kushina and Mikoto hadn't even entertained the idea he had given up information. The three genin yawned. This was boring, really boring. Kushina scanned the room again. 114 or thereabout had started, so this test would cut them in half, right down to 57. That was for the better. It was the next test that worried her. It would have to cut the participants down to acceptable levels, which meant it would have to be far harder than the previous ones. The Chunin exam proctor Fuan walked back to the front of the room. Congratulations, you have passed the first stage of the Chunin exams. Now I'll introduce you to your second exam proctor, Orochimaru. Fuan finished standing aside. A hissing serpent rose from the ground, baring its fangs at the genin. Before seemingly throwing up, convulsions started along the snake's length as it regurgitated a body, covered in its juices. Orochimaru stood and wiped off the snake venom, much to the disgust of the surrounding genin. Such cute little children, Orochimaru said, licking his lips, slitted yellow eyes looking over the assembled genin. All of Team 5 shivered at the way he said that. Now then, you my cute little children have 40 minutes to make it to training ground 44 or you will be disqualified from the exams. Now run along, my cute little genins. Orochimaru gestured for the genin to leave and they did. In fact, they sprinted all the way to training ground 44. Fuon looked at Orochimaru with a smile. Was freaking them out like that really necessary? The Yamanaka questioned. Orochimaru shrugged. Not really, no, damned if it wasn't fun though. Quote, Naruto grunted as he parried another slash from one of the root members. Naruto had already entered the Forest of Death and was waiting for his team. Until he had felt the chakra of the root shinobi, then he started hunting them down. Danzo had made this personal when he had tried abducting Kushina all those months ago. Now that Naruto had free rein to fight Root, provided he looked after Team 5 at the same time, the blonde planned on engaging in a private war against that bastard of a warhawk. Still, he only had the second exam to do so and Danzo only had a limited amount of root anbu, so he was going to run out sooner or later. Too bad. The blonde jumped back to avoid the Kaden jutsu that smashed against the ground in front of him. Naruto smiled. It was 1 against 5. And oh boy, did you have to feel sorry for those root members. The 5 masked shinobi circled him slowly. Ninjatus held at the ready. Naruto sheathed his own hook swords in one fluid movement. The blonde, turned black-haired, shinobi took a deep breath. He had no idea if this was going to work. And after all, it was just a trick he had picked up from Kami, rest his soul. Naruto had never had time to learn more than the theory of the attack. But the blonde was willing to bet what he did know would be enough for the 5 in front of him. Raiden chakra circled his fists and feet but no further. Naruto couldn't keep the viscous grin from his face. It was no Raiden no Yoroi, but it was a start. The differences in the techniques were obvious to Naruto. According to by utilizing Raiden no Yoroi you gained increased speed and power. Adding to this, by utilizing Raiden chakra to speed up one's natural synapses, it also increases one's reaction speed tremendously. Not only that, but because the Raiden chakra was circling your body, it acted exactly like its name stated, like armor. Adding a defensive property to the jutsu, it really was an incredible technique. Naruto's version of it, at least at the moment, was a pale imitation at best. His Raiden chakra was only coating his fists and feet. It would increase his speed and strength but not to the levels of the true Raiden no Yoroi. He still had a long way to go when it came to that. Naruto flicked out of the Anbu's sight, leaving a trail of sparks behind him, before appearing before the lead root Anbu and letting his fist connect with the man's face. The Raiden chakra enhanced punch caved the man's skull in and pulverized his brain, turning it into mush and killing the root member instantly. The blonde blurred out of sight again, a pained yell and the sound of snapping alerting the remaining 4 root to his presence. The 3 spun around to find the blonde with his arm buried up to his elbow in their teammate's torso. The blonde blurred again, his fist coming back as he landed in front of another root member who brought his ninjutsu up in a pitiful defense. Naruto's fist came forward, and the Raiden chakra around it phased out of existence. Naruto's eyes widened and he twisted his arm, only gaining a small cut instead of a large gash. The Uzumaki channeled chakra into a seal on his left wrist, a kunai falling into his waiting hand. Futon nature chakra coating it instantly. The blade came up, slicing through the ninjutsu before taking the root ninja's head off. Naruto jumped away from his latest kill and faced the remaining 2 root members. It seemed as if he couldn't keep up even his partial Raiden no Yoroi for more than a few seconds before it failed on him. It seemed he would need to practice more with it. His right hand moved, unsheathing the Chikuto on his hip and holding it in a backhanded grasp. Naruto channeled his Futon chakra into the blade, giving it a sharp ocean blue outline. He charged the remaining 2 root Anbu, ducking low under the first cut of the 2 before spinning and planting the still Futon chakra-coated kunai into the back of the man's head. Naruto jumped forward, landing in front of the last root Anbu. The Chikuto came up, cutting the man in half from right hip to left shoulder. The blonde leapt back, avoiding the spraying blood and falling organs. Naruto felt a light tingle in the back of his mind. The cage bunshin he had left at the genin gathering had just dispelled itself. The blonde jumped off towards the meeting point. It was time for him to shadow his genin. He wouldn't do anything drastic unless Root attacked them, but he would not let his genin die in this place. It was the promise of a lifetime. Kushina looked annoyed waiting for the second round to start. So far her battlefield predictions were spot on. All of the teams she had put her eye on had advanced. But it was eating at her. What the hell were they doing here? Kushina knew all about Training Ground 44, of course. It was the only training ground that Naruto told them to stay away from. If her insane sensei told her to stay away from it, she was sure as hell going to. After all, there was always method to the blonde's madness, and Kushina was quite sure that this was no different. Though the redhead did wonder why were the Iwa genin glaring at her with hate. Naruto had never told her that he had been the one to defend Uzu. In the beginning his reason had been because he didn't want to color her opinion of him before they got to know each other. Even when he thought he had only gone back in time, Naruto was no fool. Kushina his mother and Kushina his student were very different people, so he wanted to get to know this Kushina without her having some kind of preconceptions about him. After that time had passed, the blonde's reasons changed. He had been given a message from Dad, Kushina's father and the current Uzumaki clan head, not to tell the redhead anything. The man had decided that he wanted to tell Kushina what had almost happened to Uzu in person. As such, the Azukage had decided to come to Konoha himself, both to tell his daughter and visit her. When Naruto asked the Hokage about this, as he was quite sure that Dad wouldn't want to be out of his village after it had almost been attacked. Hiruzen had assured him that it would be fine. As for the duration of the Uzumaki's trip, Uzushiogakure would be stationed by a further 2 battalions of Anbu in addition to the forces already stationed there. Calming the undercover Uzumaki somewhat, after all he didn't want to save Uzushiogakure from destruction just for it to happen anyway. Though his reason was starting to change, it seemed that he was doing it more for Kushina than himself now. That being said, she was a good kid, so Naruto didn't really mind the change of priorities at all. The redhead sighed looking at the chain link fence around the training ground. It seemed they were trying to keep people out, or, she shivered, trying to keep something else in. The redhead and the other genin, Hell Orochimaru himself and the other Konoha ninja at that moment had no idea that the training ground was currently the center stage of a private war between a pissed as all hell S-ranked shinobi and a lot of unfortunate members of Root. Hell, the body count was already above 50 and Naruto hadn't even been inside for more than 30 minutes yet. Though the blonde was a little pissed that he was running out of Root members. He may not be able to get to Danzo just yet, but Naruto could make do with his subordinates. Orochimaru walked to the front of the group and licked his lips. "Welcome my cute little genin to the Forest of Death, please enjoy your stay." He smiled sadistically at the group of assembled genin, before holding up a piece of paper. "Now I need all you little genin to sign these papers, so that Konoha won't be responsible for your deaths." The snake Sanin reached into his pouch and took out a bell. "Your targets will be these bells. You will need one for each member of the team to enter the central tower in the middle of the forest. As there are 57 teams, a grand total of 19 teams could pass, so I'm going to tell you this now. Most of you won't pass. You have exactly 120 hours or 5 days from the moment I let you inside the forest to get your 3 bells and reach the tower. Any questions?" The snake Sanin ignored those that raised their hands. He wasn't in the mood to answer them anyway. "Okay then my cute little genin, sign the forms and turn them into the booth to get your bell. Now off with you." Orochimaru finished his explanation and melted into earth, off to do whatever the hell it was he did in his spare time. Makoto turned to her teammates. "Any ideas?" she questioned. Kushina and Nawaki looked to the sky quickly. "First of all, we can't afford to hunt for our bells for too long. We only have 5 days, and the sooner we make it to that tower the better. More time to rest, more time to plan," Kushina stated before looking to the sky again, searching for some form of inspiration. Nawaki looked into the trees, a frown forming on his face. Perfect place for an ambush, using Sensei and Kushina's seals as well as mundane traps would be good. Considering that both your and Kushina's elements are good at cutting things, we could probably form some good improvised traps beyond what we already have. Nawaki threw in his 2 cents and sighed. Makoto analyzed the information she had been given, plan forming in her mind. "Okay, here's the plan. When we get the bell, Kushina will seal it into her arm using Fuinjutsu. That way it will be slightly harder to detect us using sound, might even give us a slight edge over the Hyuga. After all, if their Byakugan saw no bell, they were less likely to be bothered by the White-Eyed Clan. Nawaki and Kushina nodded, before looking at the girl intently. Kushina, can I assume that sensei taught you some wide-range destructive jutsu? Makoto asked. Her red-headed friend nodded in return. Okay then, when we get inside we will set an ambush point in the middle layer of the forest. The point where they would just be getting inside of the tower and are most likely to drop their guard, even if briefly. At the start Kushina will use a wide-range jutsu to push the team towards the traps. Once inside they will likely start to panic and try to run back out the way they came in. When this happens Kushina, I want you to bombard them with long-range wide-scale techniques. Nawaki, you set off the entire trap and make it safe for us to move in. At the end all three of us attack as a cohesive unit and take them down quick and clean. If we get lucky the opponent might even be taken down by the traps, if not then we should at least be fighting a weakened foe. Any more suggestions? Makoto asked, looking at her two teammates. As you wish, fearless leader. Kushina and Nawaki declared with perfect synchronization. Makoto just sighed. It was freaky when they did that. The three genin of Team 5 retrieved their bell and were escorted to their own forest entrance. At the go signal the three rushed inside, for some reason feeling like they were being watched. Not an uncomfortable feeling but more like someone was watching over them. The three smiled unconsciously. It was a nice feeling. Naruto smiled to himself as he saw his genin team run inside the forest. They really were good kids. In the relatively short time they had known each other, Naruto had come to care for them beyond most. Far beyond what he did for most of the Leaf Village, even in his own dimension. Though he did find it a little strange that he would occasionally catch himself just watching how Kushina's hair caught the light or the way Makoto moved. Ah well, it was more than likely nothing, at least he hoped it was nothing. Naruto heard three almost silent thumps from behind him and turned to face the three root members, a sadistic grin on his face. Raiden chakra flared around his fists and feet. The Uzumaki cracked his neck from side to side, his sadistic grin firmly in place. Oh, I am so glad you are here. You three wouldn't mind being my test dummies, would you? The blonde charge. The three members of Root didn't even have time to scream. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.